And we're live. What's going on? Hey, Koi. I hope I said your name right. Appreciate you guys showing out. Today we're going to be talking about Trump's indictment. Boy, they got your boy. My boy ain't do nothing, as Vince will say. My boy didn't do nothing. So I want to kind of read out some of the stories. So this is from Daily Wire. Here's what legal experts are saying about Trump's indictment. I'm not going to spend too much time really going over it. I'm pretty sure everyone and their mom is already talking about what's been going on with Trump. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Right? Since former President Donald Trump was indicted on Thursday for charges related to nearly 7-year-old alleged payments to porn star Stormy Daniels,
It doesn't make sense.
legal experts have weighed in on the legitimacy of the indictment and its chances in court. I don't think it has much of a chances in court, right? Almost forgot it was Friday. Glad YouTube actually gave me a notification. Appreciate you coming out, based Zoomer.
Bruh.
We're talking a little bit about Trump, and then I'm gonna go into how I know that a lot of a lot of journalism is political, but I digress. Let's get back into the article. The indictment against Trump is sealed by the Office of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and reportedly contains more than 30 criminal charges against the former president. So I don't know what the hell's going on in this country today, but
Bruh.
Ben Shapiro made an interesting point in his show that a lot of people politicize this. I don't have because I wiped my YouTube account for unrelated reasons. I could try to make you a mod again. Let me see. Let's see. Add as. Wait, what's going on here? Let's see. You think? Try to comment now, Koi. I think I added you as a mod. Let's see. Well, until that gets situated, let me get back into the article. So, a lot of what's going on with, how you say it, a lot of things was going on with Trump today. I find it very strange, right? It seems a lot of the charges that he's gotten is purely political. Let's just be honest here. But it just seems to me that a lot of people, they hate, like, I never can understand, like, not disliking someone so much that I want them to go to jail under false pretexts. I never understood that.
Bruh.
We already see what happened with Andrew Tate. Apparently he's free. He's free now. Congrats, Andrew Tate. Finally free after I don't know how long, 5 months. That man haven't seen daylight since December of last year.
Bruh.
And he's under house arrest now. So I already said it. If they don't put this man in jail, oh boy,
Bruh.
the first podcast he goes on to, 100,000 views. This is gonna be like Steven Crowder when he came back. But I digressed. Fame attorney Alan, I don't know how to say that last name. I'm gonna butcher this. Bro.
Bruh.
Who represents Trump in his first impeachment trial, told Fox News that any first-year student could win this case if the name wasn't Donald Trump and if it wasn't in Manhattan. This is political, bro. And this opens up the floodgates that more former presidents will be prosecuted under these claims. Because at the end of the day, Democrats always do this. They set a precedent, and then the Republicans go, hey, y'all started it first. Don't get mad when we start playing the same game. And then what happened? Is Supreme Court, Obama, 2009, I believe. That's what happened. They say, hey, don't nominate justices based on a simple majority. It's gonna backfire on you guys. Democrats like, we're never gonna lose the election again. So what? And then what happened? Trump won, and then now they put in 3 justices. Now the Democrats mad.
Bruh.
But they set the precedent. They always do this. Now they set another precedent. To me, journalism used to be about reporting the news. Now it seems like it's about making headlines. It's about making history, right? Donald Trump became the first president in history to be indicted, right? And it just seems like anything to push a narrative. And this is what I think corrupted journalism today. That majority of it is just about pushing a narrative, crafting a narrative, leaving out inconvenient facts that goes against your narrative and you don't want out there. So, hey man, it's crazy world we live in. So I would like to move to Staten Island and some upstate vineyard venue, but could you imagine a judge or a jury coming home to their wife and kids and friends and saying, I'm the man, I'm the woman who let Donald Trump off? Oh, shoot. Nope. Nobody would ever speak to them again. In New York, political, there's no possibility he can get a fair trial in Manhattan. Dortchovich said. Scott Greenfield, a defense attorney in New York who is no fan of Trump, told the Daily Wire that it was impossible to truly comment on the indictment until it's unsealed. We all know this is BS. Base Zoomer. Unfortunately, journalism was always about crafting a narrative. Big names were always like that, and grassroots was always about just spreading news. And that's my thing. I think future of journalism is probably like what I'm doing, right? And there's a Pew Research study that came out that most of millennials and Gen Z get their news from social media now. Look at TikTok. This is why a lot of millennials and Gen Z people are uninformed. Because a lot of people on TikTok, they're crafting a narrative too. But I'm saying that's going to be the future of, I think, politics, right? And that's one of the reasons I started on YouTube and I started putting my opinions out on the internet, because I want to make sure I'm giving like accurate information, at least as much as I can, right? Basically, I give my perspective. Obviously, I'm a conservative, whatever, but I want to make sure it's based on some valid information, And the only thing you could probably disagree with me with is my interpretation of those things. That's the only thing. That's as best of an argument I can make for what I'm advocating for. But I digress. Because in boomers, Gen X, and then as you go down the line, they already show pre-research study shows that the more, as you go through the generations, there's more of a partisan divide between the two political ideologies. Baby boomers have the most in common. Gen Xers, they slight degree, but they still can work in bipartisan matter. Millennials, you start seeing that divide real quick. And Gen Z is even more extensive, especially with YouTube and all the social media stuff that's algorithms that keep us in our echo chambers. Bro, come on.
Bruh.
The only thing that's keeping conservatives, I think, balanced is the fact that we're surrounded by left-wing biases all around. I said this stats before. Majority of journalists are registered Democrats. That's just the reality.
Bruh.
At least they're liberal. A lot of journalists consider themselves liberal. I think I had a 90% clip. If you look at their donations, they donate overwhelmingly to the Democratic Party, right? And all the companies, all the CBS, MNSBC. I always get that name wrong. It's too long. Come on. Who came up with that name? That's NBC, CNN. All these I consider left wing, and we only got what? Fox News. That's the only major mainstream platform that conservatives have. 5 against 1 or 4 against 1. My bad. Hey, this is the only reason why we're still grounded in reality and we're still able to still debate. But in the future, hey, bro, I don't know, bro. But yeah, exactly. Koyi, BuzzFeed AI journalists identify as Democrat. Yeah, exactly. And that's because, and I work in tech, so it's because in a day, what you feed the information, what you feed the AI, that's where it sources its information from. Like, oh, this is where I'm gonna go to, right? Because in a day, how you say it? It's like Frankenstein, right? You design Frankenstein a certain way, and it becomes that perfect embodiment of that ideology, right? And most people, and if you look at the stats, most people who work in the tech industry, almost 99% Democrat. So of course there's a bias there. But hey, I digress, man. I just want to get. Do you guys really want me to sit here and read the entire article? Because I think everyone kind of knows what's going on here already. The charges in the case seem this absurd, but I see Democratic friends at social media literally popping champagne, Ronald added. So it's produced the result the party and the media want it so far. And this is my big problem with journalism now, especially mainstream journalism, right? Because at least when I come up here, I'm being honest about where I believe. Hey, I'm a conservative. I'm upfront about it. That means I'm more credible than some other journalist that's coming here or some other guy saying, I'm objective. I'm a centrist. I don't believe it. And then when you ask them their opinion, you start noticing that's the left wing position. That's the left wing position. That's the left wing position. Like, come on. Like, why fake it? Why try to fake it? Like, I don't understand. So this is what journalism has become now. And I have some examples here, right? And I think I made my point here. Let me see if I find anything else interesting. No, yeah, they're just talking about how George Washington University law professor Jonathan Torley explains that the Department of Justice previously declined to prosecute Trump on the same charges. And this happened, what, 7 years ago? 2016? I thought that was outside. Like, what, you going to prosecute Donald Trump on something that happened 7 years ago? And two other occasions, they had a chance to prosecute him on these same charges and they didn't go forward with it. But all of a sudden, Alvin Bragg, want to go for it. And here's another thing that I failed to mention before. This guy, New York has skyrocketing crime rates, and he didn't want to prosecute he wanted to downgrade felonies to misdemeanors. But with Trump, he wants to increase the misdemeanor to a felony. Come with it, bruh. This is political prosecution, bro. I have to admit that. Oh my God. I really do have to admit that. So I'm gonna switch out to the next story. Let me read some chats while you guys are here. I remember I lost a childhood friend during the Trump era. He was being impeached or something, and I can't remember on Facebook. She was wishing for his death, argue over it with her. I wouldn't even wish death upon Biden, and yet he's literally ruining the country. Oh my God. Yo, I'm telling you, I was transitioning from a Democratic to the truth during the 2016 election. Seeing these people reaction helped change my mind. Yeah, that's one thing too. In 2016, I was in college, and Trump, I just turned, I think, 19. I was about 19, 20 years old. And when Trump was running and people were saying, oh, I don't understand how people can vote for Trump. I was like, well, I can see why people will vote for Trump. And this lady looked at me confused. She's like, well, I don't see any reason to vote for Trump. And I was like, well, people got tired of lying Democrats, Hillary Clinton, saying there's a public policy and there's a private policy. Y'all remember that one?
Bruh.
That's what Hillary Clinton said on the campaign trail, I believe. It was on some interview I saw. And I was like, in Trump, and I was telling the lady, hey, Trump, regardless if you like what he said or not, he's real. He's honest. He's saying, hey, I want to build a wall. That's what I'm planning to do. And people saw that as a breath of fresh air. And I seem to be right. Even then. And back then I was more politically neutral, right? But I was still politically informed. Obviously. Like, I was still politically informed, but I wasn't as informed as I am now. Like, I wasn't into politics as much as I was now. All right. That's all I'm trying to say. But here's another story I'm going to highlight, you guys, draw to your attention. Even 70% of independents think Trump's indictment is politically motivated. If some of you guys may or may not know, if you've been new to my channel, I'm a registered independent. So this is me. This is pretty much me. This is my demographic, right? I'm not sure whether I want to like register as a Republican or not. For now, I'm going to be an independent until I don't know. I think I still need to see more from the Republican Party before I feel comfortable registering as a Republican, but for now I'm an independent, right? So this kind of backs up what I've been speculating before. And if you guys saw my video, I made a video about this, saying that this stuff against Trump is politically motivated, right? So how are Americans feeling about former Donald Trump's indictment? Well, and this is one thing I've been thinking about, is that Ben Shapiro made a lot of arguments against how this will galvanize the Republican Party, but he doesn't know how well it will do with independents, right? And some of the things I kind of want to focus on is the fact that maybe Trump may not win over a lot of independents, but one thing for sure is Biden is not keeping a lot of the independent vote. Like, I think that's one thing. A lot of people, when they come to Trump, they don't recognize how bad Biden is, because Biden has historically low approval ratings. But at the end of the day, we still don't know where that's going to go, because at the end of the day, independents are swing voters. You can't really count on them like to really go the way you think they'll go, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't know the priorities of independents. I value something as an independent. Someone else might value something else as an independent. But for the most part, it seems the majority of independents see that this is a politically motivated attack. Well, now it actually happens that we have yet to see data answering that question. However, CoinPack, what is up with these weird university names? I don't understand universities with these weird names. Poll that has released Wednesday showed that the vast majority of both Republicans and independents believe that a potential indictment from Manhattan's district attorney Alvin Bragg is politically motivated, right? Republicans 93, 5%. Oh, the lowest being 5%, and independents 70 to 26% think that a Manhattan district attorney case is mainly motivated by politics, which it is, because this is the same district attorney guy who People are causing crime in the street, releasing guys. The man can steal as long as he's still under a certain monetary value. He gets released right back into the streets. He don't prosecute that, but then he want to prosecute a political enemy.
Bruh.
Oh, what, bro? Like this is a house way. Like how you do that? And then how you not? And then people out here grandstanding. Someone said that the fact that Ron DeSantis does not want to comply. I forgot who was the guy's name. I think he was on. I forgot his name. I forget. I think it was MNSBC. I can't say that name. I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't super into politics, says based Zoomer. I couldn't vote, but I wouldn't have voted Trump. I was super into politics, but I knew I would never vote Hillary and the Clinton witch. Give me shivers thinking of her in the White House. Well, that was also me as well. I didn't vote at all because one thing I was pretty principled about that is like, hey, if I don't know anything about these political people, I won't vote. Like I won't vote for either of them because I don't know like enough about them to actually make a good decision about them, right? Because at the end of the day, I always see it as if they did something like I disagree with, but I voted for them, I felt that would make me look bad. So I'd rather not go into that. But it seems I don't know what to say, but it seems to be that many people, and I'll argue that majority of the most uneducated voters vote Democrat because if you look at the statistics, I think there was a Pew Research study that I read where they this is 2020, so it might be a little, it's not outdated, but when they look at the most politically knowledgeable age group, younger tends to be less politically knowledgeable than the older crowd, right? Now, Biden had the majority of the young vote, right? College kids, the most, like, to me, college kids have no skin in the game. So they'll vote for things. They're more likely to be bribed by idealistic promises like, oh, we can cancel student loan debt.
Bruh.
When Biden didn't have the authority to actually do it. But, the college kids jump at the chance for them to be absolved of all responsibility for their bad choices in life. And they jumped. And then now the Democrats got that in their back pocket. Say, oh, if we ever need their vote, we know what triggers to poke at them to get the outcome we want. And this is one of the reasons I started this channel too, because I kind of wanted to bring more information out there about this stuff. That you can't just blindly believe a politician, because in the day, a politician's motive is just to get elected. And if he doesn't, like, that's their main issue, their number one priority. So you have to make sure that you get your priority so that way they get theirs. It's a win-win. It's a reciprocal relationship. That's what I believe. So, something going on in the chat. I wasn't into surprise. I trust my husband and he votes for me. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's kind of like that with my wife as well. Like, we discuss things over, and then usually she agrees with what I have. Because when you marry somebody, you share similar values with them. So you trust. It's trust. That's trust. In my house, I mean, it was like that from my house for a long time, but I think my mom, my mom was already separated by the time, so she voted differently after that. But so I digress. Let's get back into the article. So that means that 62% of all Americans think that the district attorney case involving former President Donald Trump is politically motivated, while 32% think the case is mainly motivated by law. So the majority of Americans, based on this poll, agree that the Manhattan case is purely politically motivated. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of Democrats believe that Briggs' investigation is due to concerns about upholding the rule of law. Yeah, more like their law. And this is one instance of this. Now, I think I made my point here. Curiously, the same poll found that a majority of both Democrats and independents believe that if Trump is charged, it should disqualify him from seeking higher office. Wow, that's crazy. That's surprising to me to think. So independents majority think this is politically motivated, but if he is charged, it disqualify him from running for president. I don't. That's crazy, bro.
Bruh.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. I don't know. Somebody lying, bro. I don't know. But hey, that's how you see it. Like, they say, oh, if he gets charged, he gets charged. That means the case was good enough. They probably think that pursuing the case is political, but if they have justification, then it should discount them. So maybe that's the case. But Many have speculated that Trump's indictment would consolidate the Republican Party primary voters around Trump in support of a perceived political prisoner. There has yet to be any definitive polls proving that, though in the wake of the actual announcement, Thursday popular pundits such as Glenn Beck of The Blaze indicate that the move made him more supportive of Trump. And this is something Ben Shapiro kind of parroted too, that this could be Democrats trying to, how you say it, meddle in our primaries again, like they were doing by boosting up American First candidates with the funds who they perceive, or funding campaigns for candidates they thought they had a better chance of beating, So this could be Democrats, 3D chess move. Oh, we're going to try to manipulate the system and try to get a certain outcome, right? So they think they can beat Trump, but I don't know. I think they can F around and find out, but I like Trump's chances. I think if Trump has a rematch with Biden, he could win. I want to say it's for sure. I don't know. I think it might be another nail biter, right? As long as, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. It's hard for me. I don't like to try to think about the future because end of the day, all we're doing is really speculating. And I don't know. I'm kind of shaky right now on Trump right now because a part of me wants Trump to win and then just clean house because he doesn't have to worry about being reelected, so he can just be, full on him, get his revenge or whatever. But I don't know. Leaving the future of the country up, I don't know. I just think this is why I kind of started this too, because I kind of want to give a case, because I think really this is not really about Trump or Biden or Ron DeSantis. It's mainly about America, like American people and American citizens, and knowing with their eyes open what are the consequences of their vote. And I think that's what I want to focus on. I'm not necessarily advocating for our candidate. I'm more focused on the American people. Like, hey, we got to be informed about what y'all picking, because I don't want to hear, oh, I made a mistake. I was ignorant about the Hunter Biden story.
Bruh.
If I knew differently about the Hunter Biden story, I wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear those excuses anymore. I want to be like, damn, I voted for Biden under this pretext and it didn't work out for me. I think that's a more honest discussion. So now I'm done with all the Trump stuff. We already know my thoughts on the Trump stuff. You guys probably heard it bar natum. So now I'm gonna start getting into why journalism is becoming politicized, and it's always been corrupt in a way, right? And I'm teasing you guys. I know I should already get into the Ben Shapiro video, but I kind of wanted to give time for people to come in, and I got my audience here. So, hey, let's get into it. So here's one example of what I'm talking about by journalism or propagandist in a way. CNN News bans word transgender in report on the Nashville transgender school shooter, right? So we all have known that this woman has been confirmed to identify with the transgender movement, and CBS has update. Police identified the suspect as a 28-year-old, I'm not saying her name, who they shot and killed at the scene. CBS News is still working to confirm this person's gender identity, trying to give this illusion of, oh, we don't know anything for sure just yet. Like, come on.
Bruh.
Like it's obvious, and even it's obvious why if this person wasn't a supposedly part of the transgender movement, why you have all these people on the protesting on the street about her? Like, come on, guys. Like,
It doesn't make sense.
these people, like I'm telling you, they think, oh, as long as we keep repeating it, people are gonna believe us. As long as we keep repeating it, people are gonna believe us, right? And I saw a lot of news coverage today. A lot of people ain't talking about how it was such a misfortune that these kids got killed. So why the hell? This is what baffles me, and this is why I say, like,
Bruh.
this is like my video came at the perfect time. Like, you seeing the corruption, you seeing the doublespeak, you seeing the narrative crafting. They don't want to acknowledge who pulled the trigger. They only want to say, oh, guns are bad. Guns grew 2 feet and decided to go out and shoot people. No, this transgender person shot people, and I believe it's ideologically motivated. This is possible. This is a hate crime. Like,
Bruh.
I'm with Josh Hawley on this. This is a hate crime. It's obviously a hate crime. You identify as transgender. Nashville passed a law banning gender affirming care for minors.
Bruh.
So the transgender movement, and they had I did a video on this, the day of vengeance for the transgenders.
How dare you?
Right? It was supposed to be today, but they canceled it apparently. It was supposed to be for today and Saturday, tomorrow. And they canceled it because of the possible outrage they was going to do. Kentucky, they had the trans insurrection that Vince Dow just did. I like that segment of his show, by the way. It was funny.
Bruh.
Like, you see it. It's obviously politically motivated. Possibly. At least that should be a possible motive that they should walk down. At least that's what they should be talking about. But that's not happening in the mainstream media. Instead, they get this playful, like this trying to be willfully ignorant about the information that's already out there. Oh, we don't know if they're really part of the transgender community. Like trying to play cover up because they say, oh, someone on our side is looking bad. Let's try to make it look good. You got Democrats arguing with Republicans about this stuff. We have a what's up, Eric Ortiz? We have a mental health problem in this country and nobody's willing to talk about it. A lot of people actually are willing to talk about it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was the first one to really bring this up about gun buying. Marjorie Taylor Greene brought this up before, like about mental health being the issue with the Buffalo shooter, right? And no one wanted to hear it. They was like, no, it's the gun's fault,
Bruh.
right? It's not mental health issues. It's the gun's fault. It's not. And a lot of this stems from the fact that no one wants to understand the fact that as a culture, we no longer have any unifying message anymore. Right? We see everyone as others. You telling people, oh, like Ben made a good point about this, that the transgender people, they're getting fed this messaging that, oh, people are trying to eradicate them. Michael Knowles, right? When he was saying trying to eradicate the idea of transgenderism. He's not talking about actually killing people. Like, come on. Like who will say that? It's like saying, oh, we're in, I forgot what was it. We're going to eliminate poverty. No one's going to claim that, say, oh, you're trying to kill all poor people in the world. Bruh. No one's going to say that. If I say I want to eradicate homelessness, no one's going to say I'm going to go out there and shoot homeless people. Like, how you got to this conclusion? I don't understand people. Bruh. I'm just saying. So I'm going to start finally getting into a video so you guys can finally get something to look at. So this is going to be Larry Elder, and he's going to give like some anecdotal evidence of what I'm talking about. And then we'll get into the main event of this live stream, which is Ben Shapiro explaining how corrupt our mainstream media is. So I digress. Let's get into it.
If you feel that the American Republic is not a democracy, it's a republic, in 2023 is on the brink, you are not alone. Let's take the prestigious Pulitzer Prize that gives annual awards for journalism. An article in the conservative magazine website, The Federalist, took a look at the last 5 years' worth of prizes for journalism. 2018, a Pulitzer for national reporting was given to the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Oh, true. I think it was due to with pharma as well. And this is another thing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I kind of derailed me because I saw an interesting comment. Mental health issues, if you look based on politics, liberal women are reported to have higher rates of depression. They're more likely to be on medical meds for mental health issues. They're more dissatisfied with life. I made a video about that. Liberal women are the most unhappiest people in the world. I said in the world, but technically in America. But come on.
Bruh.
Right? And liberals tend to be more cynical, more negative, more depressed than conservatives. Right? And one of the things I said is the fact that conservatives are more likely to live in reality and accept reality than liberals. Liberals will have this vision that, oh, this world's so imperfect, it needs to be perfect. While conservatives accept the world for what it is and not what they want it to be. And I think this is playing a part into this mental health issue that's been going on. Right? But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Post. By the way, the New York Times has not endorsed a Republican since 1956. The Washington Post never has. They got Pulitzers for reporting on Donald Trump's campaign's alleged collusion with Russia. A story that turned out to be bogus. Was the prize rescinded? Of course not. 2019. A Pulitzer for something called explanatory reporting was given to the New York Times for reporting on Trump's taxes. Trump, like lots of business people, used deductions, gimmicks, loopholes, provided by Congress, by the way.
Yep.
With no charge, at least so far, of criminality. But never mind. Are you noticing a pattern here? 2020, a Pulitzer for commentary was given to non-historian Nicole Hannah-Jones of the aforementioned New York Times for the 1619 Project.
Bro, come on, guys.
Bruh.
Is this like, it's pattern recognition, man. No one's seen this pattern yet. Like all these Pulitzer's Prize winners are ideologically onto the left. That's not biased, right? And journalism, it used to be about reporting the news. Hey, I'm reporting observation. Hey, look, this is what's going on. There's a war going on right now in Ukraine. That used to be journalism. Now it's look at the evils of Russia starting this war unprovoked by Ukraine. Like they now they cast a narrative about something. Now they give you their input. Then it's like they try to craft a story so you can digest. And any information that can make that story less plausible, they'll conveniently leave it out of their narration for you, right? Journalism now in our modern times, it stopped being about giving you the information and more about telling you, making you reach a certain conclusion and only giving you information that will bolster that conclusion for you, right? It used to be before the evidence lead you towards a conclusion. They go journalism now in this modern time. Now it goes, we have a conclusion and then we'll give you pieces of the evidence that back up that conclusion that we pre-made for you. It's baffling to me. And look how they reward their people on their side, so they could make themselves look more credible. So then when someone on the right makes claims and stuff, they'll say, "Oh, that's misinformation." This is why they play this narrative.
It doesn't make sense.
But they could be like, "Well, I won the Pulitzer Prize. I must be more credible than you."
Nope.
And this is why I'm starting to have a negative connotation towards credentialism now. And you're going to see it in the Ben video as well, that all journalism, as always, it always started off with grassroots, right? You didn't need a degree to be a doctor. You just knew how to take care of people. And then eventually you got more proficient at it through experience, through doing, not being, right? You don't need no one permission to be a journalist. You just do journalism. This is why Tim Pool's so popular now. Because Tim Pool just didn't, a high school dropout, I believe. He didn't just wait and say, "Oh, I didn't go to college, so I shouldn't be a journalist."
Nope.
No, he said, "No, I'm going to go out, get a camera, and become a journalist." That's why I'm a big fan of James O'Keefe, right? And I think the rise of civilian journalism will be the future for the millennials and Gen Z generation. Because like I said, majority of Gen Z and millennials, we get our information from social media now. We don't trust big talking heads on mainstream media. I think the only person I really respect from the mainstream side, or actually not respect, I want to say that because I don't know everybody. I don't know all the mainstream people. But the more popular mainstream journalist or commentary or news anchor that I know of is Tucker Carlson. That's it. And I used to hate Tucker Carlson when he used to be in, I think, CNN. When I was growing up, because I remember there was a book that came out. Was it War on Boys? I forgot the lady's name. And his commentary on it, I did not like his take on there back then. Like, I was like, oh no, this guy don't know nothing. And I was like, yo, this guy's still stuck in his tricon ways or whatever. I was making fun of him. But now I kind of see his point. Right? So I came full circle on Tucker Carlson. So I didn't start off liking Tucker Carlson. But hey, all you got to do is give it time. And you see the nature of what's going on. So I digress. I think I made my point clear, but I think there's a piece in this video that I want you guys to have before I go into the Ben video.
What, pray tell, is the 1619 Project?
The date is fundamental to the journalist's most well-known.
Exactly, Base Zoomer. Yeah, such prizes used to be given to a whistleblower and war journalist, people who risk their lives to get the truth to the people. Nowadays, yeah, all you have to do is say a piece that is popular with the people that's going to vote you in, and you win. There you go. It's pretty much a circle jerk for the intellectuals. That's pretty much what it is. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Known piece of work, the 1619 Project, in which she argues that slavery's legacy shapes everything in our democracy.
You can look at the insurrection on January 6th. You can look at all of the efforts in states to restrict voting. You can look at why are we the most carceral nation in the world.
Notice the confused expression by the interviewer, but no pushback.
And that's the biggest part. Like, there's no pushback anymore. People, they use this as I kind of don't understand where you're going with this, but I don't want to make you look bad because you're on my team, my ideological team. Oh my God, bro. There's a book I should put. There's a book by a guy. I think he was a journalist. I think the book is called The People Know, right? I forgot his name. Thomas Frank, I believe his name was. I'm gonna find that book. I have that book right now, and it talks about how the elite always hate populists, and I think this is why Trump is so popular, because he's a populist. And populism, I think, it's always is a political movement that's a grassroots. Like, people are rising up and be like, "Yo, the elites don't have our interests at heart." But the elites are trying to tell you, no, we do have your interests at heart. We know what's best for you.
Nope.
No, you don't. Because every step that the elites try to know what's best for the people, it end up squandering and make it worse. All I have to do is point out to welfare. Welfare was meant to help the poor single moms. That was only 24% by the time of in the 1960s. Single motherhood in the black community was only 24%. Then Lyndon B. Johnson came in, Great Society Act, and said, "Hey, we'll give you government subsidies, but you can't have your husband in the house. You can't have no man in the house." Effectively incentivizing the woman to displace the man out of the family. And from that point on, nowadays in 2023, the black community is 70% single mother raised community. Like, and all I'm saying is, hey, you public intellectuals, in your intentions to help, how you went about it, incentivize a certain outcome and certain behavior. But hey, I digress. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's a popularity contest from prom from high school. I agree. QE. False. Before all the woke infiltration, the influence of slavery was founded to be approximately 2 generations. I also believe such a lie, but learned when writing a college paper. It's so interesting. And it goes back to the point that I think I made about Frederick Douglass. And he made a point about how if a man knows how to read, he is forever free. And that's true. If you have the ability to teach yourself any topic, and this is why I'm such a big fan of reading books. No one can control you. No one can direct you. And that's what journalism is starting to become. This is why mainstream journalism, it's not journalism per se, it's propaganda. It's like propagandists. They're propagandists now. Because all their thing is, hey, you're supposed to purport this narrative. You're supposed to meet up and conclude Sam Harris. Conclude with everybody. Yeah, this Biden story is bad, but we can't let Trump win. Trump is evil. Trump is bad for this country. We can't let Trump win. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
We can't let him win. So we're gonna pull back this story. We're not gonna talk about the story, and we're just gonna wait until our guy wins.
Bruh.
Is that journalism? Like,
Nope.
no, it's not. That's you playing a political angle. That's you being an advocate for your guy. And this makes mainstream media lose all credibility. And the only reason they still have credibility now is because of the baby boomers and Gen Z that's still here. 20 years from now, I don't think it's going to be the same story. But I digress. Let's get back into it.
The January 6th insurrection is a legacy of slavery. Efforts to restrict voting, a legacy of slavery. Never mind, more blacks are voting in Georgia than ever before, despite the alleged voter suppression.
This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
Why are we the most carceral nation in the world, she asked. The word, by the way, carceral, which I had to look up, means, quote, relating to or of the nature of prison, close quote. First, do you really think we have more prisoners per capita than North Korea or Cuba or likely even communist China?
But you see what he dropping facts. End of the day, you only go to jail if you commit a crime, if you break the law, right? So if you saying, hey, black people breaking the law should not be punishable, you shouldn't hold people accountable for breaking the law. Are you saying that?
Nope.
No, but they want to paint this narrative that, oh my God, look, we're systemically racist. We put a bunch of black people in prisons, but they're a minority. No, they commit more crimes. 48% of homicides is due to black on black crime.
Bruh.
But they don't talk about this. That narrative is kind of inconvenient, so they don't tell you that. They just tell you, oh, look, black men only represent 13% of the population, but they make up 48% of the majority population in prisons. How is that? And then they tell you the narrative. Oh, it's because of racism. They don't tell you. They leave out the truth that these men are in prisons for committing, breaking the law, committing crimes, whether that be drug sales or crime, armed robbery, theft, whatever it may be. They're not in there for no reason. They're not in there for being black. And that's the kind of narrative twisting that these journalists, or I'll call them propagandists, do. So now We're going to go into the main event, which you are actually here for. Not for me talking, not for me referencing Larry Elder, but I kind of wanted to give the setup. So then when I start talking about the videos in depth, it's not seem like I'm pulling this out of my butt.
Bruh.
So I digress. Let's get into the video we all came for. The rise and fall of American news media. This is explained by Ben Shapiro. I know some of you guys don't really like Ben Shapiro, but the information he gives is solid here. Like why do our teachers can't be like this? Like imagine that. A guy who studied to be a lawyer is a better teacher of history than most of these people who go to school for history. I'm telling you, this is what happened when you teach yourself. Because I know he reads a lot of books. He reads a lot of information. So I know if I'm trying to get to his level, I got a long way to go. But hey, I digress. Let's get into the video and I'll give you my thoughts throughout as usual.
Alrighty, folks. So today we are going to go through, in short form, the entire history of American journalism, its perversion, what it was, what it kind of has become. This is sponsored by Birch Gold. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning of the American Republic. So the first thing to understand about American journalism is that the founders did in fact prize American journalism, but journalism was largely political pamphleteering. There was no notion of an objective press, like one objective press that was going.
Yes, I agree with that. Back then, a lot of people understood that journalists wasn't objective. That's supposed to be common sense. We all have biases. No matter how small or how big, we all got biases. And to not recognize that you having a bias is you being disingenuous.
Bruh.
That's just my opinion. Yeah, you could try to be as objective as you can, and that's why you always try to counterpoint it, right? Oh, here's some of the other arguments on the other side. But the left's attempt at being objective, they'll go with the worst argument the other side have and act like that's what they're actually about. Like they actually hold you to that position.
Bruh.
Republicans believe women shouldn't have birth control.
Bruh.
Like they'll argue the worst position of the other side, not their best. They won't do it in good faith. And this is the kind of games these propagandists play. And I'm starting to call them propagandists because the history of journalism never started out as being objective. It was more about being advocates. Koyi says, I hope this stream is 3 hours long again. I don't know, man. I'm trying to stay under an hour. I'm trying to be efficient this time. So that way, people on the replay, shout out to replay. If you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment and see if you appreciate me not making it 3 hours. So people it'd be easier for people to digest this. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Going to just tell you the fact. Everything was politically engaged. All of the early newspapers in the American Republic, and there were many, many newspapers in the American Republic, all of them had titles like the Democrat or like the Republican or like the Federalist. If you look at the early American Republic, a perfect example of sort of a journalist in the early days was a guy named James Callender. So James Callender was a rather famous political pamphlet.
Yeah. My wife thought that I was already supposed to be doing streaming already, and I told her, nah, I'm doing it at 9. So I could hold myself accountable to 1 hour. That answers your question, Base Zoomer. Let me go back into the video.
Year of the time, he worked as an independent journalist. What this meant is that he was actually hired by political campaigns to go dig up stuff on the other guy and then print it. He wrote a lot anonymously, and then he became pretty famous because he was at odds with the Federalists. The Federalists, for those who remember their American history, that would have been George Washington, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton. He was very much allied with the radical Republicans like Thomas Jefferson. And so he viciously attacked George Washington and John Adams at the behest of Thomas Jefferson during the 1800 election and Alexander Hamilton. It was the Hamilton expose really that made Callender famous because he exposed the relationship, the sexual relationship between Alexander Hamilton and a married woman named Maria Reynolds. Now, he had claimed that relationship led to essentially graft between Hamilton and Maria Reynolds, his husband. Hamilton claimed, if you've ever seen the musical, that Maria Reynolds, her husband, was essentially blackmailing him. Whatever the story was, it made James Callender quite famous.
Yeah. I feel like some of this is, I don't know. I think this shows you how, like, and you see it kind of before, like, you see how they're going, like, it's kind of like history's repeating itself. Like they kind of went back to being this playbook again, right? Trying to like politically go after people they deem as unfit or not liking. And that was journalism used to be about, like investigating, seeing what's the real truth of it. Because these people ain't trying to do like a political hit job. They were just trying to find, let me try to find some dirt on this guy. And once they discover dirt and it's actual authentic dirt, then they put it out there. But there was no quorums that journalism, a lot of journalists were political actors. Like,
Bruh.
and that's the truth of the matter. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into it because I ain't trying to talk too long because I'm trying to get to the juiciest part. But you can see how journalism started out. It wasn't some big, we got to go to college or principles or whatever. It started off as usual, like any movement, deregulated, unregulated, comes out, grassroots movement, and then you went out and tried to do it. And then later on, you make iterations and it becomes more credible. But I just think now we're coming kind of full circle now. First, it come out as Wild Wild West. Now you institutionalize it with college and you put best practices and this is how the ethics of journalism is supposed to be. And now we're kind of going back to it now with civilian journalism like Tim Pool. I'll put I forgot his name. James O'Keefe. I put him in that same category too. They just decided, hey, I'm gonna do journalism. I don't need a credentials. So hey, I digress. Let's get back into it.
It also made him pretty notorious. So he was actually prosecuted under the Alien Sedition.
Oh, I appreciate that, base zoomers. I agree with Koyi. It was great last time. I think keeping it around an hour is wise, but hopefully we can have long stream occasionally. I think what usually makes it a long stream is because I interact with you guys in between, and I find that like beneficial. I like that. I like interacting with you guys back and forth. So yeah, I'll occasionally try to do it. Sometimes I'll try to keep it within an hour if it doesn't have to be. But this is like a 20-minute video, so I don't expect it to go 3 hours. Like the other one was almost an hour. Like the last stream, the video was 48 minutes. So yeah, that was like 3 hours. But this is 26 minutes. So I think we can get into it pretty fairly quickly. Like we can get through it fairly quickly, and probably at the end of it, I'll probably, if there's time left, I could probably just engage with you guys towards the end, like just like super chats or whatever. But I digress. Let's get into this. I don't know if you guys want me to fast forward through some of it or you just want me to watch the whole stream. Let me know before I go. But hey, let's go.
Acts by the Adams administration in 1800, largely because he kept attacking John Adams over and over and over, and he put out pamphlets talking about how the administration was. Yeah,
Corey. I've only been live for like 46 minutes, so yeah, you can get the playback because at the end of the streams, I tend to just to be curious with people. I try to find like best points or whatever, and I try to timestamp everything. So someone on the replay or you guys, if you want, I remember something interesting Kenny said here. You can try to find it back. I don't know. Sometimes I don't quite encapsulate everything. So
treasonous and all the rest. The worm turns.
I keep pausing it. I'm sorry. I appreciate that comment, Koyi. Yeah. So I'm gonna just go through the entire stream.
Thomas Jefferson, who had been his ally and his patron, didn't end up appointing him to a patronage position that he thought that he deserved. And so he then turned his journalistic skills on Jefferson.
Wow.
So he was the first guy who reported publicly that Jefferson had fathered children by his slave, Sally Hemings. So Callender is sort of a seminal figure in journalism in the sense that he actually was really good at ferreting out pretty scandalous material, also really politically driven.
Yeah.
There was no notion of objective journalism. He wasn't a guy who's just bringing you the facts. He had an agenda, and he brought that agenda to bear. Okay.
Bruh. What? Why is my thing not working? Bro, that don't sound like mainstream media today. He has a political agenda, and he uses skills to bring that political agenda up front. That don't sound like journalism today. So we're going back to the roots, literally.
Bruh.
Bro, let's go back. No, I gotta go back. That's crazy.
No notion of objective journalism. He wasn't a guy who's just bringing you the facts. He had an agenda, and he brought that agenda to bear. Okay, so fast forward into the early days of the Republic, and what you end up with is the most contentious issues of the day being adjudicated in the press by people who were actual activists. So one great example of this is Elijah Parrish Lovejoy. So Elijah Lovejoy was a famous abolitionist journalist who was actually murdered for being an abolitionist journalist.
Damn. Hey, wow. Damn, that man got murdered for his journalism. Right? And this is kind of the things I was talking about, that it's almost seemed like as Americans, I think we need to discard this notion of objective journalism. I think objective journalism can't quite be done unless it's checked by an ideological opposite of a person, right? Now, if the person is being upfront with you, like I am, like let's say, hey, I'm a conservative. I take things from a conservative point of view. So you understand, okay, he's coming at it from a conservative point of view. So if you agree with me, right, if you agree with my ideology, you're more likely to be like, okay, I'm more trusting of Kenny. But if you're a liberal coming in here, you'll be more distrustful of me because I present myself and say, hey, look, I'm advocating for this position. And here I'm trying to give some clarity to why I agree. I advocate for this position. That's the best I think I can do. Honestly, that's the best I can do. Best thing I can do is I can advocate for the position that I have and try to make the best case for it. That's it. That's the best attempt I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to sit here and try to look for a specific outcome. Like, I'm gonna change everybody's mind. I know that's impossible. I can't change everybody's mind. The one thing I can do is I can try to put my best arguments forward and meet the rebuttals head on. Right? And I think that's honestly what I think that's honestly what any of us can do. Right? The main problem with the mainstream media, right? What's his name? Brian Shelter, I think that's his name. He's the like, if I had to find a dictionary for corrupt journalism, his face will be the front of it. Because this man has a show called Reliable Sources, and everything he said on that show was unreliable. Like, come on. If I was on a show called Reliable Sources and I was the host of that show, my nose will be in these books so hard, so to make sure I gave accurate information, it won't even be funny, because that's a mantle you gotta live up to. Reliable Sources, they should already renamed it to Unreliable Sources with Brian Shelter, but hey, he got fired, and they discontinued the show. He messed up so bad, he discontinued a show that was long running before him. And this is what journalism has become. Journalism in this modern era is activism now. Right? The best I can say is, hey, this journalist has an opinion. It seemed objective. Okay, he's referencing information that I can validate. I can fact check. Right? It's not purely ideologically driven. I know he's trying to get me to a certain conclusion, and this is the argument these are the information he's giving me. And then it's almost like America can no longer go to just one source of information and say, hey, this is the truth. You have to go to, okay, I got to go to the right wing media. Okay, let me see the left wing and see what's like objective. And then what's the two sides interpretation of the events. And that's it. I think that's the only, that's the place we can get to as a country now. Because as boomers age out and Gen X age out and millennials like me, like you all the millennials on the other side of this camera, and Gen Z, as we become more prominent in the workforce, in politics, we'll become more partisan now. And this is why I honestly think not a civil war. I'm not like Tim, but I think a national divorce or a succession of states is more likely to happen than a war. Right? Yeah, come on, we're millennials and Gen Z. We ain't gonna be fighting no war. I'm just making jokes now, but I digress. I honestly think this is like, I don't think it'll ever get valiant, but hey, I could be proven wrong. I mean, I didn't expect a transgender person to be mass shooting a Christian school, so anything can happen at this point. But I'm just saying that it's only going to get worse, I think, before it gets better, right? We got to go through the storm before we get the calm. So honestly, I think this is what's going to happen. Political attacks, we already seen it. We never think a Democrat will use the law as a political weapon, but hey, here we are. So that's all I'm trying to say, but I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Had worked at a place called the St. Louis Observer, and then he took the title Observer and he kept applying it to the papers that he ran. He was shot to death by a pro-slavery mob because he located the Observer in Illinois, but like directly across the border. It was in Alton, Illinois. He located directly across the border from Missouri, which was at the time a slave state. And his press was actually attacked, like his warehouse was attacked by a gun-wielding mob, and he got in a gun battle with the guys outside, and he ended up being shot to death. He was shot 5 times. And as is typical in that day and age, unfortunately, the members of the mob ended up being acquitted. This is one of the sort of key moments in the abolitionist movement where it became absolutely clear that the battle over slavery was going to be a bloody one. This was not going to be just a political debate. People were going to die in this particular battle. It was kind of a shocking moment, I think, for a lot of people on both sides of the aisle as to how bloody this thing was going to get. Okay, so fast forward all the way to the end of the Civil War, and Horace Greeley is already a very prominent figure. So Horace Greeley, who had a magnificent neckbeard, he was the founder.
Oh, that took me off guard. Sorry, guys. But I think one of the things I wanted to mention here is that I think public education, education system did us a huge disservice. Because I think journalism is one of the, American news media is one of the most core things to our civil discourse. And the fact that we don't have a full breadth history lesson like this, I learned more in 3 minutes of this video than I think I ever learned about journalism as a whole. Like,
Bruh.
and I think I don't know how to say this, because the stats out there showing that Americans' IQ are lowering, and a lot of people are saying is that we becoming over reliant on technology, right? Back in the boomers used to brag, oh, I could do math off the top of my head. If you ask a Gen Z to do math off the top of their head, hey man,
Bruh.
it ain't gonna look too good. I'm just saying. I did some reaction videos to Gen Z trying to answer questions, and it baffles me that they can't answer those questions, bro. It's like I just think it's pretty rudimentary to me. But hey, I digress. A lot of it, I think, it stems from the fact that we have gotten comfortable as Americans. I want to use the word lazy. I would just say we gotten comfortable, right? Because our generations before us, they always understood the fact that to protect liberty, you have to be always present. You always have to be observing and looking out for chances of totalitarians or authoritarians or political demagogues coming in and trying to paint themselves as saviors. That they'll lead you to a utopian society.
Bruh.
When in reality, a utopia can never exist in the real world. That's how you say it. That's impractical. That's unrealistic. There's going to never be a perfect society. We can get as close to perfect as we can, but no one can promise a perfect society. And the minute someone try to promise you a perfect society, you're supposed to start looking at them like, yeah, how you gonna do that? Because the nation can't even agree on 70% of common facts. And you think they're going to agree on a perfect vision of the country? Like, no.
Nope.
We can't even agree if whether we should support Ukraine or not. Should we keep doing wars or not? Can we still send money, keep sending the money or not? Like,
Bruh.
we have so much things that divide us just based on ideological priorities. For anyone who can sit here and say, I can promise you utopia is a false, it's like a red herring, I'll say. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
An editor of the New York Tribune, which was the biggest paper in New York at the time. He was allied with the Republican Party. In fact, he may have actually named it in 1854. He was such a radical Republican that he was more radical than Abraham Lincoln. What people tend to forget about the Civil War era is
Koyi, I think one of the reasons why I think the Christian community is like Christianity is starting to become more prominent. Like that guy, I forgot his name. The Whatever podcast. I don't know if you guys seen some videos I do. Sometimes I do cultural stuff like that. I just been everything political this week. I don't know what happened to me. I didn't plan to do that. I planned to do some cultural stuff, but stuff happens. I noticed that a lot of the reasons why people are starting to run to Christianity is like even Andrew Tate mentioned it. Like Andrew Tate used to be an atheist. If some of you guys didn't know, he used to be an atheist, hard atheist. He used to be like, there's no such thing as God and all this stuff. He used to do that. Then he realized, damn, if evil like that can exist in the world, then something good must also exist in the world. Because he's like, when he started living in Romania before they sent his butt to jail,
Bruh.
he realized how safe he felt in Bucharest, Romania, how they overwhelmingly Christian, how they treat each other, how they wouldn't steal or cheat each other. And he's saying, if you believe in the idea of God, does that make God exist? And he believed yes, because he's saying there's a unifying force of good that leads people into doing something for their fellow citizen, for their fellow man. And you don't get that idea from a materialistic worldview where you think only pain and pleasure matters. And what's pleasurable for you may not be pleasurable for the other person, but it wouldn't matter because you're like, oh no, it benefits me and doesn't matter. Like,
Bruh.
this is why I think a lot of people are starting to turn to Christ or starting to looking for more meaning in life, because they figure out like how, I guess, meaningless it all seems just to do things based on pain and pleasure and hedonistic desire. And I think the liberals are kind of making the case for Christianity themselves, because if you look at stats, there's stats out there that shows that religious people are more happy and content with their life than secular people or unreligious people. You see it time and time again. The stats show that evidence all the time, right? People who are traditionally married are more happy than people in modern relationships, right? People who pay more to their traditional gender roles are more happy in a marriage than people who don't pay to their traditional gender roles.
Bruh.
Right? You got this open relationships versus closed relationships. Closed relationships have a higher success rate than open relationships. Right?
Bruh.
But our society, our culture is pushing us going down this stuff. And this is kind of the reason why the Bible is kind of being proven right in a way. It is. Because if you like you say, if you do anything, this is a point I saw from Jordan Peterson. If you do something that's against the Bible, you tend to have negative outcomes. But if you do stuff that's kind of in line with the Bible's principles and beliefs, you tend to have a happier life than people who don't follow that more principles and belief. And this is something I was saying my Christian school used to tell me. They say, if you don't leave Christian, at least you will leave moral. So I left moral, at least. And I'm starting to come closer to Christ. Every day I see this nonsense, especially with this transgender stuff that's been going on. Like, this stuff pushes me more towards Christianity, not away, because I see how meaningless our society has become. We don't care about anything anymore. And this is the principle why a lot of people need to believe in a higher power. But I didn't mean to ramble about full of philosophical stuff, but I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Is that Abraham Lincoln was the moderate. There were people in his own party, William Seward to name one, who was actually expected to win the 1860 nomination, who pretty much argued for abolition right off the bat. Greeley was pushing Lincoln to declare the...
Corey, you derailing me. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Every philosophy will come to pass, every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess Jesus Christ is Lord. Hey, man, the liberals doing the work for y'all. Like, if I had to make an objective argument, I'd be like, look at this side and look at this side. And there's something that the Bible talked about too, about how you're supposed to be the best person you can be, because that's a marketing tool, just like a personal trainer. You wouldn't trust a personal trainer to work you out if they weren't fit, right? Because you'd be like, if you're not fit yourself, how you can teach me to be fit, right? And I think Christians need to take down that same message, right? And one of the things I do agree with Andrew Tate is his belief that Christians are too tolerant, right? We let people identify with our religions without actually upholding the values of the religion. I think that's the biggest mistake Christians have done. They overcorrected. They went too tolerant because everything's in balance, moderation in all things, right? Because with Islam, they won't tolerate you saying, "Oh, I'm Islamic," but you don't do any of the natural traditions that Islam demands of you to be part of the religion. But we let people out here saying that Jesus is gay, Jesus is a socialist, and we let them go unchecked. And I think we showed because in a materialistic world, people who are atheists or who only believe in a material world only values power and leverage. And if Christians don't have any power and leverage, no one's going to respect Christianity, right? There's a reason why no one wants to disrespect the Jews, because Jews have power and leverage. And that's the same thing I tell black people. If you want respect, you have to get respect. You have to gain respect. And being one of the poorest people in America doesn't get you any respect.
Bruh.
Right? And I'm saying the same message to Christians. I say, y'all need to be in industries. Y'all need to make something of yourselves. So that way you could demand some respect.
Bruh.
Because the Islam demands some respect. Oh, yo, nice to see you. Feels glad you're here. So that's like my mini rant, I guess, because I like to give solutions. I don't necessarily like to just sit here and complain a lot. I just think that's one of the reasons why I think Christians should just be the best. The best way you can advocate for your belief systems is to live it and to show results. When someone see you, damn, why are you so happy? Damn, why you don't struggle with the things I struggle with? Because it's easier to convince somebody that's looking for answers than someone you're trying to give an unsolicited, I forgot how you say it, evangelizing to. When you evangelize to somebody, they're more willing to hear it if they were seeking the information. But if it was unsolicited, they're more resistant to it. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's better to show than to tell. I think that's how I would go. But I digress. Let's get back into it. No more philosophy talk. Stop derailing me, guys. I do appreciate the conversation, though. I really do. I like you guys kind of, how you say it, derailing my conversation. But I digress.
The end of slavery before Lincoln actually wanted to. And he supported the radical Republicans in the aftermath of the Civil War.
No, base Sumer. Okay. I want to make some clarifications. The point I agree with was not tolerating people identifying with your movement as Christian, right? Like you have that transgender priest that was in the Joy Reid show talking about how God is a woman, right?
Bruh.
The movement as a whole should condemn that and say, hey, that's not Christian. That not follow our beliefs as Christians. That's blasphemy. Rebuke. That's what I'm talking about not being tolerant. I'm not saying go out and harming people or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, you can't let people identify themselves with your movement, right? It's like someone saying, hey, I'm a socialist and I'm a Republican. No, bro, you're not a Republican. You're a socialist. You get me? it's calling it out. I'm not saying necessarily to harm or do anything to them. That's why I understand you disagree with Islam. But the point is, like, you can learn something from everybody. I think that's one of the reasons why the Bible tells Christians to be tolerant, because you can learn something from someone else and you can take what's working for them and you just discard what is not good. And that's all I'm trying to say. Damn, everyone from Vince tells, did Vince doubt in his stream already? How was the Minecraft? I wanted to stay, but I was like, damn, I got to get ready for my show. Bruh. I appreciate you guys showing some love, though. Let me get back into this because I'm getting derailed.
War, the radical Republicans were the people who were responsible.
Oh, yeah, Basin. Okay, Basin, right? Yeah. Okay, I figured that's what it is. I just want to clarify, just in case, on the replay, someone's going to hear this and be like, oh, he's saying we got to be like, no, I don't want that to happen to me, all right? I digress. Let's get back into it.
For the 13th and 14th Amendments, they really wanted to abolish many things, including segregation. But obviously, after Lincoln was shot, all of that sort of went by the wayside. The radical Republicans did what they could, but they were running into pretty strong headwinds. He was really disillusioned with Ulysses S. Grant. And this is where all the reports about Ulysses S. Grant being kind of a drunk, corrupt president came from, where people like Horace Greeley. Now, revisionist history suggests that a lot of that was exaggerated, that Grant was not aware of a lot of the corruption. That's why you've seen actually in recent years, Grant's stock as president go up. If you look at surveys of historians from about 1990, they would rank Grant among the worst presidents, and now he's actually ranked as among the best presidents. Greeley ran actually against Grant as what he called himself a liberal Republican, and because the Democrats in the South, right, the former slaveholding states, they wanted Grant not to be the president. They supported him in that race. He got his ass kicked. But what he was really, really famous for doing, aside from running the New York Tribune and being involved in politics, is his very famous line, "Go west, young man, go west and grow up with the country," which became a call for manifest destiny post-Civil War. Everybody should go take advantage of the Homestead Act and they should settle the continent. So again, activism, journalism, kind of one and the same, right? It's all part of the same thing.
So far, has Ben making some good points, guys? Because to me, this is confirmation bias for me. I think I've been a confirmation bias because I've been feeling this way about journalism for a long time, that it's just another form of activism, but it paints itself as being some truth teller. Like, oh, we're the truth. This is the truth, right? And this is one of the reasons I think, like, if you want to center my message is, America, be more skeptical of your institutions, of your politicians, of your journalists. Bruh. Like, keep a watchful eye, because these people, like, in the day, my mom used to always joke, and she's a Haitian immigrant. She always joke around like, oh, Kenny, you better learn math or people are going to take advantage of you. And I think America needs to learn politics, or politicians will take advantage of you. They'll make promises that is beyond their capabilities of actually keeping. Bruh. Right? Student loan forgiveness is the biggest part. Biden said, I'm going to forgive student loan debt. And then Nancy Pelosi came out, actually, Biden can't do that. Like, and you fall for this hook, line, and sinker. Like, it's crazy. But I digress. Before I go into it, let me see what you guys are doing. I wish I could hear Ben Elo. I'm visiting at my dad's and his young son will not shut up. Oh, man, maybe you have to rewind this after the stream. Koyi, what is the tenets of being right? Okay, so Tech, I've seen you support the 50-50 split in couple relationships, and that your desire not to be a woman due to fear of God rather than to fear God's will, furthers God's will. You guys are having a debate in the chat about what? What is a 50-50 split? I don't know what you guys do. Do you think I'm right, left, or center? You guys are having a full-on debate in the chat. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to continue in the video. Maybe I can catch up on the conversation. So.
Okay, then after this, we get the muckraking era. So the muckraking era is essentially reform-minded journalists. It's most famous during the Progressive era, which is mostly associated with journalism around the turn of the 20th century, the fin de siècle period. But there's some sort of predecessors in this particular era. These are people who didn't like graft, they didn't like corruption, and they reported along those lines, and sometimes exaggerated those reports, as we'll get to in just a second. It included people like Ida Tarbell, Ida B. Wells. Technically, some of these people are people who actually predate the muckraking period. So Ida B. Wells, for example, who reported on corruption in the railroads and Jim Crow, tremendous journalist. She was technically prior to the muckraking period, but she kind of fits within that general rubric. Ida Tarbell was considered a muckraker. She's the person who took on Standard Oil and probably led to the breakup of Standard Oil. She liked to attack what were called the big trusts. Journalists like Upton Sinclair, who wrote The Jungle, a very famous book about the meatpacking industry, much of which is false. Right, talking about how like people were falling into the meat and then just being ground up into the meat, and so you might be eating Bob when you ate your dinner that night. Even Teddy Roosevelt said that was not, it was just crap. But he wanted to push forward the Pure Food and Drug Act, and so he did it anyway. TR.
Oh, so you obviously you see the political games that these people play. So he knows, like FDR knew this was an exaggerated story about meat markets, but he wanted to push a certain policy, and he knew people believing this narrative will further his political ends. And I think that's what's going on right now in our current America news media now as well. So I digress, because I don't know much about this period with FDR. I hear so much conflicting information about FDR, right? One thing I for sure believe is that his New Deal did extend the Great Depression. That's all I know for sure. That's all I know for sure. Because I'm reading right now the Politically Incorrect Guide to Economics. It's a pretty good book, guys. I think you should. If you don't know anything about economics, it's not too much to read. But that's one book I'll recommend to anybody if you want to get like an introductory to economics, and it's not like wokey as usual, because they make the claim how a lot of even economists are political actors nowadays. Because this book I'm reading, which is the Politically Incorrect Guide of Economics, they talk about how activism is in economics. Economists are being more like activists now, that now the government elects people who are not actually economists, but they're like lawyers or something like that. Like, this is what our country has turned to now. And I don't know, man. This is the biggest sigh in history, because I don't understand how people keep like electing people who are not qualified for these positions, right? Because the famous like conservatives, we all agree that Democrats seem to fail up, right? Like Stacey Abrams can lose 2 elections and still be nominated to be the front runner for the Democratic ticket in Georgia again, bro. Like, I swear, bro. I digress. Let me get back into the video.
Had said, the men with the muck rakes are often indispensable to the well-being of society, but only if they know when to stop raking the muck, which is a very kind of Teddy line, which is, I love this stuff, but only as far as it doesn't affect me. In any case, that's where the phrase muckraker comes from. Again, there's some predecessors to this. Lincoln Steffens exposed the graft of Tammany Hall and Boss Tweed. You heard about this sort of stuff back in middle school. So there are all these journalists, and basically their job is to uncover graft, uncover corruption. Again, very politically driven people. These are people who definitely had an agenda, and they were very much associated with the progressive side of the aisle. The progressive era was all about the idea that there could be expert administration of government that would sort of wipe away the corruption of politics. And so they were very focused on this sort of stuff, and they were, in fact, quite partisan. The next thing that happens is yellow journalism. So yellow journalism and muckraking are kind of part of the same general trend. There's no hard line between muckraking journalism and yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is a term that's very often used to sort of describe the journalists we don't like these days. But the division is not quite as hard and fast as all of that. So, for example, Joseph Pulitzer, right? You recognize his name from the Pulitzer Prize, the height of journalism. Wow. Well, he was considered a yellow journalist in his time. He purchased the New York World in 1883, made it into a tabloid. He had extremely strong ties to the Democratic Party. The most famous yellow journalist, of course, was William Randolph Hearst, the basis for Citizen Kane. Hearst was one of the richest and most powerful people in the entire country. He tried to run for president. There are a lot of sort of hyperbolic stories about William Randolph Hearst. The most famous story about him probably isn't true. That is the...
So the Pulitzer Report was based on a Democrat. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. And this discussion about yellow papers, attack on honest officials, this is where I think is the start of the narrative control that a lot of mainstream media practices today. And I don't know. It just seems like history is repeating itself. I think this video validates a lot of what I come to believe, right? So honestly, I want to keep going actually, because fuck it. I cursed. My bad, guys. I'm gonna go for 2 hours. F it. So, what's going on?
Story that on the eve of the Spanish-American War, it was unclear whether the United States wanted to go to war with Spain over Cuba, and he supposedly telegraphed another person, "You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war." Probably apocryphal, Probably. He was definitely a war hawk. He's somebody who really did not like what he saw in Cuba and used his papers in order to push people in a particular direction. About this time, because it's a reform...
Push people to a particular direction. I think this is the playbook. This is the playbook now. This is like... And one thing I think should counter this is a grassroots movement, like populist. As a populist, I think populists are more... how you say it? I think we're more trusting of civilian journalists than we are of mainstream journalists. Because mainstream journalists seems to be, hey, y'all all got papers and this is what y'all supposed to say. And this is why I think a lot of these mainstream guys, after they get fired or they leave mainstream news media and they become like independent podcasters and stuff, because they have more freedom to be authentically themselves. And I think that's the future of mainstream news and information now, is like people want people who are more authentic, who are more real, right? And that brings more trust. Because at the end of the day, what is journalism without any trust? What's the point of reporting a story, even if it's factually and true, but no one trusts you? Like, what's the point of doing journalism? Like, there is none. And I think this is the main thing mainstream media is missing out on. I think there was a poll one time when Trump was still president in 2020 that people trusted Donald Trump more than they trusted the mainstream media. Like, bruh. And I think the mainstream media kind of did it to themselves because, you know, Donald Trump pointed out with the fake news, right? And they didn't know how to act. They didn't understand. They couldn't deal with the fact that someone was calling out their lies or their exaggerations of events to try to purport a certain narrative or get the American people to believe a certain conclusion. And I think this is one of the main reasons why the mainstream media has such vitriol for Trump. Because he was the first one to be like, yo, I call BS. Like, y'all ain't reporting real news. You're trying to get me down to a particular narrative. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Minded era. People decide it's time to start professionalizing journalism. Now, you've looked at the history of journalism so far, and you say to yourself, they've done some pretty good work. I mean, they've uncovered some real graft, some real corruption, sex scandals, like all this stuff was getting uncovered. And it also happened in sort of a rough and tumble way, in the sense that you were able, because everybody was openly partisan, to take into account the biases of the journalists of the time when you're actually reading this stuff. Kind of not what we're used to. Right now we have this whole shtick about objective journalism and how there's one truth that is presented to you by CNN. So where did that start? The answer is in the same place as most bad things in the 20th century, the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era was all about the professionalization of journalism. So Pulitzer, attempting to professionalize journalism, launches the Columbia School of Journalism in 1912. Again, the idea here is to change how journalism is taught. So, like pretty much every other industry in the United States, the way that industry used to work in the United States is you went and you got an apprenticeship in that particular industry. The way that you became a lawyer, for example, you didn't go to law school. You actually went and you apprenticed yourself to a lawyer. And this...
Bro, we need to go back to that. I believe, and this is one I'm a big advocate. Like, if people don't want to go to college, I'm a big advocate for trade school or getting a tech certification. I think that's the future. Apprenticeship is the future. Because like college, like think about it. All the debt that people go through college just to have zero result. Like to me, if you're paying for something, there should be some type of guarantee behind it, right? Because nowadays we live in the information age. We live in the digital age. You can find any information you want with a click of a button. All you got to do is put your fingerprint on the screen, and you can look up anything you want. You can learn anything you want. You want to teach yourself how to program? You can learn it in 6 months. You want to learn about politics? You can learn it in 6 months. Like. We have so much access to information now that I don't understand the need for credentialism. Now, I think credentialism still has a place in our society for I think for the medical field specifically, like things that takes long hours. Like it's hard to prove. It's consequential to have mistakes like engineering, medical. Those things still need college, but stuff like journalism, I don't think you need a business to be a lawyer, even an economist. I don't think you need college for that necessarily. Now, college may be currently still the best place to learn all those information because they still have all the historical records of previous economists and all this stuff. But I think I learned a lot just reading books by myself. And this is the thing, this is why I support James O'Keefe's vision about journalism, civil journalism, like civilian journalism. It's just you go out and do it. You don't sit here and wait for permission. And you learn it from somebody that's actually doing it. Like, who's going to be a better journalist? If Kenny learns from James O'Keefe, or I go learn from Brian Stelter, who's degreed up?
Bruh.
You guys know the answer to that. Because if you look at trade school is you spend maybe what, 10 grand for a class, whatever. You do the workshops, you learn, and then you spend 2 years apprenticing someone who's already doing it. You work under his company, you get a salary, you graduate with, you have no debt. There was an interesting documentary that PragerU put out. I think it was called Trade Up or something, and it followed a woman who decided to drop out of college and went to trade school, and she became a welder, and she's making great money, living on her own, debt free. I think that's the path forward, because a lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Xers, I believe also, and a lot of Gen Z are struggling with student loan debt with no job prospects. And trade school is a big opportunity that many people can go into. And I think a lot of jobs nowadays are unnecessarily requiring a college degree. That's just my opinion. And I'm speaking from personal experience, right? Like, I just think like, a lot of this don't need a degree. Why you need a degree for this? Just if you have the ability to do it, just do it. Like if you have a demonstrable skill, like if you know how to edit, that's a demonstrable skill. Like you can demonstrate, hey, look, this is a video I edited up. Look, does it look good? It meets your qualities. You should hire me. Nowadays, I don't think and even in Google, Facebook, what else? What else? Other companies, Snapchat, all these tech companies, they no longer require a college degree to apply to their tech positions, because they understand that, hey, these we just need skilled workers, and it shouldn't matter how you acquire the skill. It should just matter you have it. That's it. And I think college has necessarily became a gatekeeper, because these wokies, they always think about, oh, we want to give minorities more opportunity. Black men are statistically the least educated people in America. And this is why I recommend, hey, go to trades. Do well for yourself. Get a tech certification. Become a network engineer. Become a system engineer, whatever. All you need is a certification and some job years of experience, and you're golden, debt free. And nowadays, high school just became about, hey, sending your kid off to college. College became this big political push, and it's all been Paulson. This is all politicians doing. They push the American people down a certain path. Oh, people who got a college degree make $1 million more. But no one's gonna, to me, I don't equate the success of successful people to college. I just think successful people who tend to be successful go to college because they believe it'll help them or give them an edge. But they already had the talent, they already had the skill to begin with before they got to college. Tim talks about it all the time when he dropped out of high school. He said, I had this ability already, and I was going to be successful with or without college. He didn't go to college, and boom, look at him now. We all know his name. But you think Tim would be a better journalist if he had went to journalism school?
Nope.
I don't believe that. I went on a little tangent there, but I honestly believe that some aspects of how we were doing it before, I think was actually better. Less gatekeeping. It was just like, oh, if you have the ability, apprentice under me. And I think a lot of companies can benefit of creating a stronger workforce for the future if companies did that. Oh, you joined the Google's apprenticeship program. Okay, you learn under a more senior person and you get the skills. And as you gain experience, I think that's a better outcome, I think, for a lot of young people, instead of forcing them this road to being debt slaves to a debt they can never forgive. And they're sitting here waiting for government handouts to absolve them of their personal their negligence of putting themselves in a position where they can't pay off the debt. I don't think that's practically smart for many people. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video. I know I went on a tangent. I heard apprenticeship. I said ding, ding, ding. I digress. Let's get back into the video.
This is how you learn to become a lawyer. The way that you would become a journalist is you would go and work at a newspaper, and you would follow around the guy with the battered hat, and you would just go and report on things. And this is how you learn to do things. Instead, because in 1912, there was this idea that there was an expert class. And the expert class, they were the smartest people. It was very tied into bizarre eugenic notions about human behavior, but it was all about this expert class who, if we only left them to be the administrators of our fate, we would all be better off. And that ties into broader commentaries that you can see me talk about elsewhere about progressivism and the idea of elitism and the administrative state and all the rest of that sort of stuff. Well, this ties into that general sort of mindset. So Pulitzer said at the time that the goal was to impart knowledge, not for its own sake, but to be used for the public service. And this leads to, in about 1920, a journalist named Walter Lippmann sort of recasting how journalism is to be done. So even to this point, there was an idea that journalism had to be professionalized, but everybody understood.
Wait, what happened? Ooh. Okay. I thought I lost you guys. My bad. I saw the buffering. I was like, did I lose the screen? Let's get back into it.
Understood that journalists had bias. Walter Lippmann was the editor of the New Republic. He was a very elitist type of human being. He wrote a very famous book in this era in which he discussed how journalism had to be professionalized. He said that we needed to free journalism from error, illusion, and misinterpretation. He called
Wow, error, illusion, and misinterpretation. Bro, it looked like that didn't happen, sir. I know you passed away a long time ago, but that didn't happen. When freedom of opinion is revealed as freedom of error, illusion, and misinterpretation, it is virtually impossible to stir up much interest in its behalf. It is the tiniest of all abstractions and an over-refinement of mere intellectualism. But wide circles of people are aroused when their curiosity is balked. The desire to know, the dislike of being deceived, and the made game of is a really powerful motive, and it is that motive that can best be enlisted in the case of freedom. And now they use that very same credentials to push all this stuff this guy warned against. That's crazy. That is crazy. But I digress.
Newspapers the Bible of democracy. And he also set up this idea of objective journalism. He said emphatically the journalist ought not to be serving a cause, no matter how good. In his professional activity, it is no business of his to care whose ox is gored. As the observer of the signs of change, his value to society depends on the prophetic discrimination with which he selects those signs. As Walter Lippmann over here. We'll continue with our history of journalism.
All right, I'm skipping the ads. So while I'm skipping ads, I'm looking into the chat what's going on. Let's see what you guys are doing. Oh, so wait, hold on. I'm skipping ads, guys. No free ads on me. That's one reason why I started liking my pre-recorded videos a little bit more. I'm able to skip a lot of the ads and just get the information that I need. Yeah, I know Ben needs to eat too. We all do. We all need to pay bills. I don't knock it though. Like, I understand that's how he gets his moolah. All right, let me see what you guys were talking about. It's cute. Koyi, your husband's studying cybersecurity. Well, let me think. Cybersecurity. I think there's certifications you can do if you have the money or the finances for it. I think one piece of advice I would get, because I'm being honest, I work in tech, honestly, but I don't do cybersecurity. One thing I would recommend is like he tries to find an entry level like cybersecurity job and just look at the qualifications and reverse engineer that. So looking back, okay, it requires me to have a CCNA or something like that. I use that as an example. That's a high level cert, but like find an entry level job that only requires an entry level certification. And that's likely to be more durable, because since tech is more hands-on, it's easier to show his skill set and his understanding, and that could be an easier pitch for him to get a job starting out. At least that's what I'm thinking. But I think when regards to tech is like ahead of a lot of job fields with this, is that since their field, like, it's a lot more demonstratable. But yeah, that first interview is going to be the hardest one to get. But once it starts rolling into it, he should be able to find something. Now, he ain't going to get paid like more experienced people, but how I will approach it is you care more about gaining experience in the field than the pay. So whatever pay they give you, I would say just take it, gain the experience, and a couple years later, you jump somewhere else. I think that's like my unsolicited opinion on it. So I digress. I know I rambled a little bit, but let's get back into Ben. I think I skipped further enough. Hopefully we don't lose any context.
Of journalism. And journalists are now a professional class, right? Just like an accountant, or just like a lawyer, or just like a mathematician. They have a series of duties they perform, and those duties have a particular set of steps. Now, not all of that is bad, right? You actually do want journalists to go through things that have become kind of normalized, like, for example, double sourcing. Right? Double sourcing wasn't a thing for a very, very long time in American journalism. You heard from Jim that Bill was stripping somebody, he just reported it.
Wow.
Jim says that's how. Now the idea is that you're supposed to go and you're supposed to get a couple of sources to confirm on the record, or at least on background, that a thing is true before you feel sure enough to actually run it. So some of that does come from the professionalization of journalism. Now, again, as I've said before, and as we've shown, the history of journalism, there are a lot of really amazing stories that got broken by journalists without the professionalization of journalism. Because if you just kept lying over and over and over, people, it turns out, stop trusting you.
Exactly. That's what's going Bruh, come on. That's what's going on currently in our current culture. Media keeps lying, keep trying to craft narrative. You get the COVID shot, you won't pass COVID to anybody.
Bruh.
Natural immunity don't exist with COVID.
Bruh.
Like, people are gonna spot BS, and it's crazy how people in the past saw this, and they're like, "Yo, you're gonna lose credibility if you keep putting bad information out there. You can't use one source and then justify that. Oh, that's the source. I'm gonna go along with it, right?" And there's some benefits of professionalizing journalism in a way, but I think it's more like setting up guiding principles. And I think everything's good under principles. Like, if you follow a set of principles and beliefs, it's easier to hold you accountable for when you fall out of best practices, right? And I think a lot of journalism forget that. They use the principles as a way of, oh, this is how I bulk up my narrative, and that's it. I'm gonna get it from 3 sources, but all 3 sources are politically aligned with me, and they're gonna see the information the same way I am, and I'm gonna report it as fact because I got 3 sources. Like,
Bruh.
I'm starting to think journalism start using the credentials as some type of game of appearing objective to unsuspecting consumers or unsuspecting subscribers or people who are not politically knowledgeable enough to actually see the gerrymandering, I'll say, or the lies more accurately, or just a interpretation. Like, so, like, it's hard to sometimes craft a difference between someone's opinion and a factual account of what's going on. But hey, I digress.
But it did lead to sort of this notion that the journalist was not the guy, the high school grad who sat in the typewriter and wore a battered hat all day, right? The way that you watch 1940s films and you watch His Girl Friday and that's what they look like. It wasn't that. It was a guy who went to journalism school, and he sat in a school, and he learned how to journalism. And that was going to be the way that everything worked from then on. And this transformed the way that journalism was done. Now journalists were supposed to be objective. Now they were supposed to be above the fray. They weren't supposed to be political. Well, the idea of it in a vacuum isn't terrible. The problem is that human beings do have bias, and what they end up doing is they inject their bias back into the journalism, and then they claim they're objective. And that's
and that's the problem with everything going on in the mainstream media, right? They use the fact that, oh, look, I'm a journalist. I'm objective. I just report the facts. I report the news. Okay, how about these little facts that I found about your misquote about COVID preventing the spread of the COVID vaccination spreading I'm messing up my words. The COVID vaccine is supposed to stop the spread of COVID, but it doesn't. How you deal with this fact of reality?
Bruh.
Oh no, that was I never said that. And then you show a clip. It doesn't matter. Like, these people I think they're bad actors at this point. And I think there's too many journalists and a lot of young kids. And you see a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of you guys seem to be in college, but I remember all the people that was in political science or journalism, they kind of had an idea where they were, what they believe already. And they were just using that place or that field as a medium to purport their worldview to the masses. And I think that's what happened to journalism now. And I think that's why it's so corrupt now. And this is why, like I said, we're going to have to start looking at journalism sideways, because I don't think it's the time to be too trusting of people in the mainstream right now, because it's all seem like they all want a particular outcome. They all want a particular worldview or a narrative to be purported in society, right? Like, there's so many examples. Like, when America was going against, I think, the Vietnam War, a lot of mainstream liberals in the mainstream were against the war. They were saying we shouldn't be in foreign lands.
Bruh.
But we were there fighting communism in Korea, I believe. That's where the Vietnam War is at. I don't know. I might be misremembering my facts here or my information here, but that's the media has always been this way. It seems like, right? You come in, oh, I have I like this. We should try socialism, and you will never, how you say it, condemn socialism, or you'll never critique socialism because you don't want your ideology to look bad. And I think this is what a lot of journalists are doing, because a lot of journalists are
Bruh.
ideologically tied to the Democratic Party. And now, even today, when you saw with the transgender shooter and stuff, liberal media seem to be just the talking points of the Democratic Party at this point. And we all know it. But to sit here and for journalists to sit there and be ignorant of the fact that we know that you guys are political actors here and we shouldn't be trusting anything you say out of your mouth, they still sit here and expect you to believe them or trust them.
How dare you?
They get mad when, oh, how dare you think for yourself? We tell you how to think. You shouldn't think for yourself. That's bad. This is what journalism has come to nowadays. And this is why I'm starting to take the position that most mainstream journalists are propagandists until proven otherwise, right? Until I look at the information. Okay, you make this claim about COVID, or you make this claim about the economy. We're not in a recession. Okay, we'll see. How come the previous definition of recession was 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, and now all of a sudden, when your guy's in office, oh no, the recession is not as simple as that.
Bruh.
They got all the excuses for this guy. Oh, we'll see. My eyes don't lie. And this is what journalism has become. Do not trust your eyes, people. Trust what we say to you, because we're trusted. We're the most trusted news in America.
Bruh.
Like, come on. It starts to become a game of masking your ideology and try to present it as objective truth. But hey, I digress. I've been rambling a little bit too long. Let's go into this.
That's lying, right? That's untrue. And you see that sort of infused all of journalism up till the present day, starting in about 1920, again, with the professionalization of the journalistic class, in the same way that the administrative state was supposed to professionalize the business of government and professionalize how journalism was done. All of this is print journalism. In the 1930s, you have the rise of radio. The rise of radio, this is how most people start getting their news.
Oh, okay. Vietnam was after the Korean War. Technically, the Korean War is still ongoing. Thank you, Turk. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just remember it was a war where they were trying to prevent communism. That's all I remember. And I just remember the mainstream media at the time of 1950 to 1953, they were covering it very negatively. They were calling the soldiers like not communists. They were calling them colonists, like, oh, this is imperialism. They had a lot of negative critiques of it. And I use that as an example of how mainstream media, to purport a certain narrative, would purport the news instead of saying, hey, this is the attention. This is what this is why America's in Vietnam War right now. They're trying to prevent communism. This is how they're going about it. Instead of reporting it like that and leaving it up to you to decide for yourself how you think about the Vietnam War. No, they have to craft a narrative for you and say, no, this is how it is. So then when the Vietnam veterans come back, they're getting spit on by liberal hippies.
Bruh.
And this is what journalism has become. It become a propaganda machine where it's a device or a mechanism to control the American public. And the only way people can counter that is the rise of civilian journalists, like what James O'Keefe is doing, what Tim Pool is doing. Hell, even the way what I'm doing, Ben Shapiro's doing, and Candace Owens is doing, right? Because at the end of the day, these platforms are the future of news. This is why the news media try to get Ben Shapiro banned from Facebook, not banned, sorry, censored from Facebook, because they realize, damn, Ben Shapiro gets more reach on his online podcast than we do on our broadcast cable news TV being aired on airports.
Bruh.
This is the changing of the guard. This is the new media right now, right here. Me guys talking on the live stream, having side conversations on the super chats. Like,
Bruh.
This is the new interactive media. This is the future. Millennials and Gen Z already get most of their information on this platform, and it ain't changing anytime soon. And cable news guys, they're trying to play catch up now.
Bruh.
So, hey, I digress, but let's get back into it.
They start listening.
Koyi asks, I hope I always say your name right. Koyi asks, this is true. Do you think Daily Wire has done a lot of good for preventing censorship? I think in a pragmatic sense, yes. Because end of the day, conservatives have this thing about complaining about, oh, things should be the way it is. And we tend to be more cynical, more pessimistic. And I think what Daily Wire is doing, regardless if you agree with them purely 100%, I believe it's important that we create an alternative, right? Because like I told you before, there's 5 news media companies that are left wing, and we only got one. Like, I know there's other smaller news columnists like the Post Millennial, I think the Washington Examiner, right? We got smaller news guys, but the second biggest conservative media company we have is the Daily Wire. That's 2 compared to 5 that the left has. And I think conservatives need to get in the build our own stuff mode, right? And that's more of a libertarian view on things. Like, oh, you don't, it's not your property, build your own. If you don't like the fact that this guy has Ferrari, then build your own and you create Lamborghini, right? And I think this is the next step. I think conservatives should stop trying to cater so much to the liberal worldview and just be like, nah, I'm just gonna build it and they will come. That's why I agree with the Daily Wire, right? They're building their own stuff. They're building their own chocolate, no matter how cringy or cliche a lot of us think it is. It's something new. Hey, stop giving money to people who hate you. And that's the only way it will happen is if someone builds it. And Daily Wire seems to be the people leading in that way. And I think for that, I believe they're net positive for the conservative movement, just based on that alone. And now you got Steven Crowder. Regardless of how y'all feel about the Steven Crowder situation, I already put my thoughts out there. As an independent creator, I understand where Steven Crowder is coming from, but I believe he kind of like put his nose into somewhere. He was sticking up for somebody that wasn't really in trouble. Like Brett Cooper was out here saying, hey, I didn't really ask him to really speak on my behalf. I can speak on my own behalf. So it was kind of like, you didn't need to do all that. But I think in a practical way, I see why he did it. Like he wanted attention. So when he launched his media company, he had more eyeballs on him. And obviously in Rumble, you see him, 200,000 live viewers at one time when he streamed his show. It's a smashing success. And now we have a possible third conservative news network that could be on the coming up, Mud Club, right? And I think that's the future. I think that's what conservatives should be focused on. I don't think conservatives should be focused on trying to change what the liberals or the left already has under their control. Is just build your own and have control over that and compete in the free marketplace. Because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be the capitalist. So we'll win by being the better product. And I think that's the next step. Right? So I digress. Sorry for that long rant. I hope that answered your question. Oh yeah, it's center right, but you get what I'm saying. But that's the closest thing to a conservative that we have, base Zoomer. That's an example I'm thinking about. Sorry, but hey, that's why I like Rumble. That's why I support Rumble. So conservatism without Christianity is doomed. I don't know. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, conservatism is all about being governed with principles, right? And let's say I was a Stoic, right? And I believe in Stoicism. I do for my fellow neighbor or my fellow man. That's me being guided by a set of principles. And I think that conservatism could still work. I just think that it can't, how you say it, forget its roots, right? And it's being guided by a set of values, whether that be religious or non-religious, right? But we can't have this like circular thinking that's going on, because right now, I believe America is the most circular it's ever been in history. And you see how depressed people are, mentally deranged. You get mass shootings more frequently, even though we have less gun access technically compared to people in the 50 years ago in the past. Kids had more access to guns 60, 80 years ago, and there was not as much mass shootings as it is happening right now in our modern culture. And I think that shows you that we need some type of moral fabric in our country. Actually, there was something I bookmarked. Actually, let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I'm derailing the stream a little bit, guys, to show you this. I'm not going to show you this, but I'm going to tell you this. This is what they used to teach us in school. before they took this verse out of schools, right? So this used to be a model that used to be recited in public school. Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee, and we beg thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. That used to be a saying that you were required to say in public school until they took it out. And notice how in that quote I just did, they never mentioned like a particular God. They just say a God. And I think this is what the conservatives should stand upon. Like, not exactly, if you're not Christian, you're not a conservative. It's necessarily, I think, to be more abstract about conservatism is you believe in something and you understand there's something bigger than just you, right? And you have an obligation to your country, to your neighbor, to your fellow human being, right? Christianity teaches us that we're all God's children, right? So it's this sense of, hey, we're all on one team. And I think that's what conservatism is really based on. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong about that. But hey, I digress. Let me see. I'm gonna see your reactions before I continue. Don't watch the news, okay? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Facts, Kenny. God made us. These principles came from God. I understand. Like, I understand that the Judeo-Christian value is the bedrock of all Western society, right? Like Ben Shapiro argues this in his book, The Right Side of History. I don't know if you guys read this book, but this is a pretty good book. How reason and moral purpose made the West great. And this is a great book if you want to understand where I'm really coming from. Is that I understand that Judeo-Christian values and Greek reasoning has created the bedrock of our civilization, right? Greek-born power of reason, which is most of our reasoning comes from like the Athens natural law of power and all that stuff. So those are those things I find interesting. I don't know. The Right Side of History is a great book. Talk about this concept of what I'm talking about, like faith and reason. You need both. You can't have one or the other, because in the day, the balance of power is what America was founded on. Liberal, the classic libertarianism, right? But hey, I digress for sure this time. Let's get back into the video.
To the radio every night, and you have a few sort of trusted figures on the radio, as we'll see some of the figures in TV who became very famous.
I think a lot, but Western society was based on Judeo-Christian values, right? And the values is what I think the conservatives should, your conservatism should be based upon, right? Because, like I said, just like my Christian school, you may not leave here Christian, but you will leave here moral, and that's the argument I'm trying to say. That we need moral purpose. Conservative movement is based on moral purpose. And moral purpose doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you believe solely in God and in Christianity, and that's the only religion we'll allow in the conservative party. It's more like it should be more inclusive of people of different walks of life, but they all understand that, hey, we need to believe in something. We need to adhere to a higher power. And I think that's where conservatism could be more mainstream about. Right, because right now the reason why conservatism is not really, I don't think it's taken off as much as it should, is because the left paints it as some zealot, like, oh, if you don't fit this brand, you're not a conservative. Steven Crowder talked about this a lot, like how he don't act like a typical conservative, and he sometimes feel ostracized from the movement because he's comedic, he has fun, while conservatives have this brand of being like suit wearing, tie wearing, and it feels less inclusive, if I have to use that word. I feel weird using that word, but in the day it makes sense. This is why the Democrats focus so much on their messaging, on their marketing, showing that, hey, look, we're a party for everybody. And I think conservatives need to kind of play that game too, but I don't want the conservatives to compromise their values. And that's where I'll say lead with your values and say, hey, we're a party for everybody that believes in our country, right? This is why nationalism is something grounded nationalism is part of like having an American exceptionalism. And that's what I'm talking about. American exceptionalism is like the best common abstraction. I think it's more applicable to every American in the United States, right? You have to be, this is why Ben Shapiro said he doesn't want to get into politics, because you have to compromise in a way, right? Because to win, you have to include people that necessarily don't agree with you 100%. Right, but I'm not saying, yeah, exactly. There's pretty much conservatives believe there's an objective morality, aka there's a higher power. There's something greater than yourself, whether that be the country, your fellow citizens, right? What you believe to be American exceptionalism, like, hey, I'm for America. I'm just saying there's a principle that you adhere to, and necessary. And I think that necessarily makes you a conservative, right? That could be Christianity, that could be Stoicism, right? Like that could be I don't know what a Catholicism, right? Judaism, right? There's a principle that you personally adhere to. It's not just, oh no, I'm the leader of the party, I could do whatever I want. No, right? But it's a debate that's going on right here. So I do think conservatism can be outside of Christianity in today's modern atmosphere. It has to be. Ben Shapiro is conservative, but it's Jewish. Yes. And I think that's the future. I think in a day you can have your slice of the party, right? The Democrats do it all the time.
Bruh.
Democrats have you got the corporate Democrats, and then you got the progressives, and then you got the socialists. They're all conglomerated into one party. And I'm just saying conservatives can do the same thing. Even though you don't agree with Muslims can be part of your party because they believe in a value of objective truth, objective morality. Hey, the state doesn't decide human rights. The rights were created, the rights was given to us by our creator. And whatever that creator means to you, we're talking about the same thing. Right? The truth is the truth, but your appreciation of the truth is what's a different matter, right? That's why I brought up that passage that used to be taught in school. Almighty God. It doesn't specify what God it was. It was just a more abstract general term like, hey, there's a creator. We all recognize there's a creator, right? Right. Okay. Whatever you name that creator, this or that's for us to hash out. But we all agree that we are here to something greater than ourselves. And I think that's the core message of conservatism. But one thing conservatives have is has a hard problem is defining its movement. And I think that's one thing that conservatives as a whole should be able to articulate perfectly. Because sometimes it seems like conservatives mean this to one person. It means small government. It means this. It means that. But the Democrats know what they believe in. They're like, hey, we're for government. The government should take care of everybody. The state it's the state's responsibility to guarantee happiness for all, right? Free healthcare, free this, guarantee rights that. So we can't sorry has to come from God of Israel. I don't know. We can accept Jews and heathenism, but they have to accept that the only truth is in conservatism. I'm just talking from a practical sense. I'm not talking more from because this is where politics come into play, is that you have to be pragmatic about that, right? If you want to win, do you want to team up with people who you have more in common than? That's pretty much what politics is. You have more in common with a Muslim and all. Because think about it. The Democrats do this with blacks, Asians, Hispanics. We necessarily don't agree on everything, right? The blacks want reparations and they want Asians and they want other people to pay for it because Asians are very successful in this country. They have a higher income in this country. So they're more likely to be paying most of the taxes because 90% of taxes come from the top 10%. And Asians are probably disproportionately represented in that 10%, right? And they come together. So I'm saying we can do that too. Like we have to come together in a similar faction. You may not agree with the Muslims or the Hindus or whatever, but they're more ideologically closer to you than you are to an atheist, circular liberal. I'm just saying.
Bruh.
Right? Because in the day, you may not agree on the name of your creator or who your creator is, but you do agree on a creator. And I'm just saying, just making it more abstract, more adoptable, I think is what it is. Because a lot of the reasons why the left takes over all these institutions, and Ben talks about this in The Authoritarian Moment, in his book, The Authoritarian Moment, how the left came in, infiltrated all these institutions and just laid out their ideology out there, and they was able to convince the majority of America to default into their position. And I think that's the problem that conservatism has right now, is that end of the day, I can't make people, how you say it? You can't make people really agree, like believe what you believe, but I just think it's up to us to make, if you're a Christian, it's up to you to make the most persuasive argument you can for why someone else should be Christian. And I think that's the best you can do in this country. But from a pragmatic stance, like, hey, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to get as much people on my team. That's a possible strategy. And I'm not saying I know everything. It's just my thoughts on it. And this is one thing conservatism has to hash out, is like, what is the conservative manifesto? Right? It can't just be for one group of people, because then you ostracize everyone else. And we're a republic, yes, but we operate in a democracy type of system. We use democracy to elect our representatives. And if we put out a value system where everyone else feels excluded, but Christians and nationalists and patriot, when we have we live in a multicultural America, and in a multicultural America, there's so many different tribes and beliefs that you have to somehow create a coalition. That's just my thinking. I could be wrong about this. Someone can probably get me on this or tell me, oh no, you're wrong about this, Kenny. But I just think it's, how are you going to unify a black man like me, a white man, an Asian man, and a Latino man without appealing to a bad guy. This is why the left like to paint the white people as bad, because they can go, hey, look, they're the majority and they have all the power. And the only way you can fight against the white man is if you Asian, you Latina, and you black man, y'all come together against a common enemy. And that's the game I'm talking about. If we come out and say the conservative party is based on Christianity, everyone who don't agree with Christianity will feel excluded from the conservative movement, when maybe rationally they agree with you, like policy wise they agree with you, and the left will play the game like, oh, the conservative party don't represent you. That's a common argument I hear from people on the left that doesn't agree with the fact that I identify as a conservative. They'll say, oh, that party doesn't represent your interest, right? And they play this angle. And I'm just saying as a way of countering out that message. But I've been rambling too long, bro. We're supposed to be talking about journalism. I'm here talking about philosophy, political tactics and stuff. And that's all it is. It's just me being pragmatic. If I'm being practical, like if I'm trying to win elections, that's the way of how I would try to market the conservative party. And within the party, it's easier to fight with your peers, like argue with your peers, than to try to win people who have no relatability to you. That's all I'm trying to say. But I digress. Let's get back into the video, guys. I hope it wasn't too... I hope you guys found that useful. I hope I didn't just spatter on and bore you guys to death. But I digress. Let's get back into it.
Started off on the radio. And all of this is part of the rise of mass media. And we'll chart that to the rise of television, okay? Because the rise of television really changes how people consume the news. Now, again, the model has shifted to quote-unquote objective journalism. At least this is the highfalutin journalism. And when...
The one drop rule is racist. The cute koi. Like, I don't believe in the one drop rule. I have biracial kids, and I don't call my son black. I call him he's mixed or he's biracial. Because end of the day, to say someone is black when they're half of something else is, in my view, is to deny its other heritage, right? So I don't think that's a good rule. And I think a lot of black people who use that is just a way of trying to build up their ranks, right? Oh, I claim Obama because he's half black. To me, Obama is the first biracial president ever. We still waiting on our first black president. That's my opinion, right? Because I'm logical, but I digress about that. Yeah. Hey, and in the end of the day, Obama won't like reparations anyway because he's a descendant from a slave owner. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
TV comes about, there's an idea that TV is going to be in the public interest. There are only 3 networks. At this time, there actually was an attempt, if you look at the history of TV, to raise the kind of intellectual level of the American public, because the rise of television really changes how people consume the news. Now, again, the model has shifted to quote-unquote objective journalism. At least this is the highfalutin journalism. And when TV comes about, there's an idea that TV is going to be in the public interest. There are only 3 networks. At this time, there actually was an attempt, if you look at the history of TV, to raise the kind of intellectual level of the American public. You would have like full hours of Shakespeare on primetime television at the beginning of TV. People like to mock the 1950s as a time of sort of the dumbing down of American culture, and it's precisely the opposite. If you actually look at how many people were subscribed to the Harvard Classics, by the way, it was like tens of thousands of people. It's like 50,000 people a year were receiving the Harvard Classics. It was an attempt to actually broaden out the...
Yeah. So this is one of the... From a cultural perspective, and this is why this is a tough conversation to have, right? And I know Vince Dow, you guys all follow him. He talked about simulation, and this is a form of simulation, right? End of the day, all I'm trying to say is that how you say it? I don't know how to say this. How you necessarily get people to agree with you is that you all have to have some kind of common belief system, right? But, if people don't want to simulate, like they want to bring in their culture from another country and say, no, you're erasing me. Like you hear all the arguments when Vince was debating the simulation. If people don't want to conform to the new culture, this is how you get friction. And this is how you get where we're at today, where you have to somehow piece a common enemy so people can unite under. Right. And I understand that people say, yeah, you can unite technically under God and all that stuff. But I just think that's more of a long game. And I'm thinking I'm arguing more for a short game. The short game, right? Like in a year from now, I don't think the whole country will be Christian. Right now, a lot of the world is circular. A lot of the world is non-believing. Right. And you see this in Japan. This is why Japan and China are very anti-immigration. they have low crime rates, they have all this stuff, is because they have social cohesion. And in the 1950s, there used to be social cohesion. This is why you were able to air Christian stuff and no one will be offended that you're airing Christian stuff. No one's going to be like, oh, you're not respecting my religion.
Bruh.
And this is why in these matters of pragmatism, I take a playbook from the libertarians. And the libertarians is your rights end where mine begin, right? I may not like the fact that you're a Muslim, but I won't prosecute you because you believe something differently than me, and you shouldn't prosecute me because I believe something different from you. And I think that's the social harmony that I'm talking about. Like we can harmonize with these people, but like I said, like end of the day, we have to somehow make conservatism like more appealing. Right? You can't just be clear cut, like, because one of the problems, and I think Steven Crowder pointed this out in one of his streams, I forget where. But he points out how conservatism, like the left, a common jab the left like to throw at conservatives is that we're too cookie cutter. Like, oh, look at him. He's wearing his tie. He's this. He believes in Christianity. Like, it's easy to try to pick apart and try to paint conservatism as it's only for a white man. This is why a lot of black men, and I get it a lot in my comment section, this is why a lot of black men will call you a sellout Uncle Tom coon for being a black Republican, because of this narrative that the Democrats were able to craft about the conservative party, right? And this is some of the, I'm just pointing out some of the pitfalls that I struggle kind of, I have arguments against this now. Like I'll say, hey, look, the conservative party is the most diverse party and it has ever been. Are you saying you're against diversity and inclusion in the Republican Party? So you only for diversity for everything else but the Republican Party? Like that don't make sense, right? That's ways I counter that now, right? But before, that used to always trip me up, that damn, like no one really looked like me there. You know, they push their values in your face and say, oh, look, they're not really for you. Look, they're clean cut, they wear suits and ties, they don't joke around, they're not fun. Conservatives are boring. And end of the day, a lot of people, especially in the middle, they're not as politically engaged as someone that will be watching this live stream now. So I stop describing Vince Dow. No, I'm not talking about Vince Dow. I'm just saying that's a common jab that liberals will try to throw at conservatives to try to make them seem like, oh, conservatism is not cool, right? I'm just getting into character about how I think a liberal will attack a conservative. That's all I'm doing. I'm not making fun of Vince Dow. If Vince Dow's saying this, I'm not making fun of you. I promise. But I digress. Let's get back into it, bro. But it's all about crafting a narrative at the end of the day. So,
appeal of elite culture to the masses, because the elites were running now the biggest medium of mass communication in human history. Okay, so the rise of TV is the next thing that happens in journalism. And you see that the anchor becomes really key. So this is the period of the news anchor. So it used to...
Well, the tech news and reviews, who cares about being cool? Well, if you look who wins the popular vote, the Democrats, right? And sure, that don't give you electoral wins. Like, sure, the electoral college prevent demagogues and the tyranny of the majority from winning an election. But when it comes to cultural aspects, that's a lot of influence and power. And this is how the left got into institutions, right? And I think this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm just talking about a public perception. How you talk to somebody that's not politically active or not politically knowledgeable about these topics. An unknowledgeable person about politics, how they'll vote if they ever vote. This is why Democrats push out these go out and vote, get out and vote, because they know if a person goes to the voting poll and he's uneducated about political affairs, they're likely to vote Democrat more than they're likely to vote Republican because they believe a narrative. Oh, The Rock said The Rock endorsed Joe Biden, so I should vote for The Rock. Because I should vote for Joe Biden because everyone's pushing me to go vote. I don't know who I should vote for, but I heard The Rock was with Joe Biden and The Rock's cool. I think The Rock is cool. And if The Rock is endorsing Joe Biden, I should go vote for Joe Biden. Bruh. And this is why I say Democrats have the most uneducated voters in their ranks. And this is one of the reasons why I think being cool is important, or at least having the ability to shatter that perception that the left try to craft a narrative about conservatism. But I don't know how I got here. It's about talking about politics. But let's get back into this, what Ben was talking about.
To be the journalists were the people who actually went and reported the things. Now you have the rise of the talking heads. Right? These are the people you're supposed to trust. We telegraph all of our reporting to this one guy, and this guy, he sits there and he reads you the news. That is the person who you're supposed to establish a relationship with. And this is people like Huntley Brinkley, this is Chet Huntley and David Brinkley beginning in 1956, or people like Edward R. Murrow, who began live radio broadcasts for CBS during World War II, but launches See It Now in 1951, and who mostly was famous. He was a man of the left. Edward R. Murrow actually worked to get the Frankfurt School theoreticians into the United States during the 1930s and 40s, actually. He really was a person who left. He was most famous for going after Senator Joseph McCarthy. He had these very famous back and forths with Joseph McCarthy.
McCarthyism. Yeah. So this development about radio, TV, and all this stuff, and I think I might leave it off at here. If you guys want to watch the remaining 10 minutes, you guys can, or you guys want me to just wrap this, like finish it up, because it's already 2 hours. And I mean, I can keep going if you guys want to. Just let me know. I'm gonna look into the chat while I'm wait. Going to college makes you dudes having common sense make you intelligent. Let me see. I think Vince's content is a great way to conservatism. He talks in a broad way and is relatable, present himself in a way to attract more viewers. He's a good example of what you say. Yeah, I think it's easier for younger conservatives to do this. I'm talking about more like Ben Shapiro age kind of conservatives, like Matt Walsh, for instance. Matt Walsh is like, I know he attracts a lot of young viewers, but some of his takes, like in regards to marriage, like he's just saying, hey, people just go out and get married, and he doesn't quite understand like the dating market that's going on for millennials and Gen Z. Now, I met my wife in college when I was a freshman. Like I met her when me and her were both 19. So I met my wife pretty young. So I didn't have to deal. I met my wife before Tinder became a thing, right? So I literally got out of the dating market right before Tinder came and ruined the dating market.
Bruh.
So a lot of those conservatives, they don't understand like the struggle that young modern conservatives are dealing with now. And I think that's why Vince Dow is able to better attract younger viewers. And they try to remedy this a little bit by getting Brett Cooper into their program. So I think that's one way they're trying to counter to this. We're just talking more in depth here that we were in just some people there engage heavier in philosophy while others don't. So I believe I should follow him in here too. Oh yeah, I guess so. We railed. No, it's fine. This is why I like live streaming. Koi. Oh, good points, Kenny. Yeah, go ahead and finish. I am sorry we railroaded you. I do find what you're talking about very interesting. Yeah, I do appreciate that comment though. Brett Cooper is fun. Yeah, she is fun. Like, and that's what I'm saying. They trying to cater more to, because they know what Gen Z, like they know where, like, look, if me, a solo creator like me is able to find this information that, hey, Gen Z and millennials are more on social media, of course they're going to try to find, okay, make it more fun, make it more engaging, and then go on social media. She curses too much. Yeah, I try not to curse. I think I made a mistake, but that's just me being that's me being dad mode, because my son's in the repeat everything you say mode, so I don't want her to curse,
Bruh.
So yeah, Michael's my favorite, right? So whenever Ben gives like some jabs at Michael Knowles, I'm like, nah, don't go at my dog. But Michael Knowles, I think he does a good job. Like when he went on the Whatever podcast, I was like, oh, conservatives need to do more of that. You need to engage with the culture. You got to go into the Lions Den. I know it probably seems illogical, but Michael Knowles going there, I guarantee you, he changed at least one person's mind about some of the topics they were discussing on that Whatever podcast. And I think this is how conservatives should be. They should be more engaged in pop culture and the cultural stuff, right? And I think that's very important. I'm not a fan of Brett. Culture stuff is not my dig. I love Michael Knowles though. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think like some of the hardcore like Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, and them, they should interact with some of the younger crowds and see what modern conservatives or young conservatives are dealing with. Brett Cooper is more relatable to Gen Zs than I am, possibly, because I'm not at that stage of life anymore. I'm already married. I already have my son, my second one on the way, right? I already have kind of like, my life is kind of ahead, even though I'm only 26 years old, but I'm not as relatable as a Brett Cooper, she recently graduated, whatever, actor. I mean, she's kind of unrelatable too. She's an actress, but it plays into that that branding that they're trying to attract a certain viewer with her, and that it works. So I want to, yeah, Brett is not, yeah, for men I don't think she's as relatable as, but end of the day, women on social media, they get a lot of attention. I'm just calling a spade, right? Like if you go on Instagram, on average, women have a higher following than men, especially on Instagram, right? So I just think it's a way, because the cultural stuff is what a lot of people, when they think about politics, that's what they engage in. Not the hard, like philosophical, like me, I'm a nerd. Like as you can tell, I'm a nerd, right? I read books, right? Like the only saving grace that I have is that I'm a tall, somewhat fit guy. That was my saving grace in the dating market, all right? But some of the philosophical stuff is not as engaging as the cultural stuff. Now, the cultural stuff, that's the fun stuff. Debating about dating culture, hookup culture, right? Reacting to the trans movement. The cultural stuff is more engaging because it's a less barrier of entry into politics, right? Abortion even, right? People can have an opinion on it without having to know all the underlying philosophies. Now, if I'm trying to debate which is better, libertarianism or conservatism, that's a higher bar to for knowledge. Like you have to know, okay, what libertarians stand for, what conservatives stand for, what are their overarching philosophies and frameworks for their policy positions. You have to go more in depth. You have to have more in-depth knowledge for that, and that's a higher barrier of entry to participate and even understand that debate. And a perfect example of this is when Michael Knowles was here debating some of the women on whatever podcast. I advise you guys to watch that when Michael Knowles was on whatever podcast. When he made these points talking about philosophical stuff, the girls just looked at him like they didn't know what the hell he was talking about. They were like,
It doesn't make sense.
they couldn't understand what he was talking about. They didn't understand what the metaphors he was using, what philosophical arguments he was doing. They were just like, that sounds crazy to me. That's some Hebrew. They just push it off as nonsense and continue making their nonsensical points. And that's what I'm talking about. The cultural stuff is like a easier barrier of entry, I would say, right? And this is why, like in my channel, I try to become from more of an educator point of view, like a guide. I'm a guide. Like I present myself as a guide. Like here's my information. Here's what I'm referencing. Here's what I believe. This is what I'm doing. All right. So I honestly, that's what I think is going on. I'm gonna be quiet until Kitty finishes video. It's fine. A part of me knew it was gonna be 3 hours. I just know. All right, I'm done. Okay, I'm done. Let's get back into it. Yeah, Matt's reaction videos are the best. I'm just saying that out there. I agree. So I digress.
McCarthy on his show. McCarthy called him a communist. It was sort of a career maker, and it's the thing people remember most about Edward Murrow. And then you have Walter Cronkite, same period. Cronkite began anchoring the CBS Evening News in 1962, and he was considered the most trusted man in America. Now, again, he wasn't a reporter per se. He was the guy who read you the news. But because TV is about whichever face appears before you, you're very often not even writing your own stuff. So maybe the most famous thing that he ever did on TV, his response to the Tet Offensive, was not actually written by him. It was written by one of his writers. But it may have turned the course of the entire Vietnam War. After the Tet Offensive happened, he went on TV that night, and Walter Cronkite was a man of the left, and he said this.
But it is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could.
The fact of the matter is that Walter Cronkite, again, being a person of the left, but projecting himself as an objective journalist, was able to do way more damage in the American public debate than if he had been running some newspaper called the Arkansas Socialist, and he had said that sort of thing. People would have been like, oh yeah, that because he didn't like the war, got it. But because he was the face of TV and we had trusted people on TV, we were all supposed to respect that as objective journalism. Also during this era, something else happens. You see that the people on the news, the talking heads, are very, very trusted. You also see the rise of these star journalists. Now, this is sort of a reversion to type because, again, many of the muckrakers were, in fact, very famous. Upton Sinclair actually tried to run for governor of California.
And I think this is what mainstream media is starting to become. Like, a lot of journalists are trying to get notoriety and clout now. So, this is crazy. I encourage you to watch more of Keen's content. It's really good. Oh, I appreciate the shout out. I really do. What she said. But I was trying to think about. I think nowadays it seems like a lot of journalism is just looking for clicks and views now, and this is why, like, I forgot this guy name. When Trump was president, he made it his business to always confront Trump so he can get a highlight. I forgot his name. He will find every opportunity to be in front of Trump's face, disagree with him, talk, and then Trump will just dismiss him, saying, "You're fake news. You're fake." So I don't know, but I think the journalists right now, they're motivated by the wrong reasons. And I agree with Ben's point about what he said about Cronkite, is that the mainstream media, or they can no longer project themselves as objective, because I just think they're too emotional to actually play that game anymore. And actually, I think that's an advantage that, like, we have, right? Because at least with me, I own where I believe. Like, I say, hey, I believe this stuff. Here's why. Right? Now, this is the information I have. If you say I'm basing my opinion on wrong information, correct me. But I never see that. I just see this like, oh, you don't come to the same conclusion as me, therefore you're wrong, or therefore you're bad, or therefore call me name here. Like, and that's what I'm used to. So I'm like, oh, you ain't gonna change my mind just calling me names, because I got here rationally, and the only way I'm gonna get out of this is rationally. So debate me or make a point, like make an argument, right? Like when I make my videos about racial disparities not being based on racism, but based on choices and behaviors, I get some pro-black in the comment section telling me that, oh, I'm ignorant. But I'm like, okay, but that's not an argument. What's your counterpoint? I never get a reply after that. Right? And this is some of the stuff we're fighting against. And I think this is why we need to be a little bit more outspoken about, or at least debate, or at least call some of this stuff out. Right? We don't have to be up in people's faces, but we just be like, hey, look, man, I don't think what you said is true. Here's why. And I think that goes a long way. That requires two people to do two things. People will do when they get called out on their BS, like when they don't know a subject that well. Either they're going to research it to make it stronger, or they research it and realize that they were wrong and they were operating off a false assumption. Now, that takes a lot of pride, right? Wisdom begins with knowing that you don't know enough, right? But not a lot of people will get that wisdom, right? And at the end of the day, man, it's a fight, man. It ain't gonna be easy, but hey, this is what these videos are here for, right? But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
At one point. But the rise of star journalists again, you'd be remiss if you didn't mention here Woodward and Bernstein and the breaking of Watergate. This changed the way that journalists also thought about themselves. They were still using the ideas of Lippmann, which was, you have to be an objective journalist, but you could now be a star. And the way that you were a star is you challenge power. And you particularly challenge power from the people you don't like. And that became a big thing. This is why nowadays the way that you win a Pulitzer is by attacking Donald Trump, reporting on Russiagate nonstop, even if there's nothing there. You just dig and dig and dig, and then you win a Pulitzer. This is all the legacy of Woodward and Bernstein. It gets you a slot on CNN, gets you a slot on MSNBC. That's the real journalism. Back to television. During the 1980s, you see, again, more of these anchor types who are supposed to be trustworthy. And again, we're supposed to pretend that they are objective in some serious way. They're not objective, as it turns out, in pretty much any serious way. You have Sam Donaldson over at ABC News, for example, or you have Dan Rather over at CBS. Both of those guys are really, really to the left.
Damn, I'm seeing a pattern here. And remember, I told you the guys' stats in the beginning of the video that 90% of journalists are overwhelmingly Democrat, overwhelmingly left, liberal. Right. And even in there, when they were starting all this like cable news and all this stuff, they're of the left. Craziness. Most of the prominent news anchors, journalists were on the left. And this is the things I'm talking about. Like, I think conservatism, we need to be more proactive about this stuff moving forward. Right. We have to be forever vigilant, because like I think Vince Dow made a similar point about this, is that conservatism, they gave too much leeway to the liberals, and this is how they took over. So, Base Zoomer, good night. Hope everything's good with your dad. So hope to see you on the next stream, Base Zoomer. Appreciate you for coming out to the stream. So I forgot my point because I said goodbye. But it shows that, like, the left has this tendency to be, I guess they say people who are to the left tend to be more creative. And I think we need to take some of that creativity as well and purport that in our own way. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Dan Rather became the CBS Evening News anchor in 1981. Donaldson started doing Primetime Live with Diane Sawyer in 1989. Rather was, along with Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings, kind of the faces of the news. Right? So in the early 1990s, when I was growing up, these were the people who people watched on TV to get their news. Now, it turns out all three of them were wildly to the left. All three of them, like, very, very much to the left. Particularly, obviously, Dan Rather, who later would blow up his entire career in 2004 by running with a story that was completely false about George W. Bush going AWOL from the Air National Guard. Right? It was a completely made-up letter, and it led to the end of his career. Now he's back and he's still doing stuff. I remember one time, actually, I was at an event, and Sam Donaldson was there. I think this is the 2012 Republican National Convention, and Sam Donaldson was covering it for ABC News Radio. And at the time, he was doing a political commentary show for ABC News Radio. And I went up to him and I said, I don't understand. You're overtly political now. When you were covering the news, did you have the same ideas? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, then weren't you being dishonest with the audience, projecting objectivity when obviously it was influencing how you were covering the news? And he said, what, do you think you're better than I am? And I said, well, I mean, kind of. Like, I'm honest about my own biases. You're totally not honest about your own biases.
And I think that's the point that I think encapsulated this whole video, is that a lot of mainstream journalists are not upfront with their biases, right? Fox News is a better example of what Ben Shapiro is talking about. Fox News make it outwardly known that, hey, we're a conservative news media company. And this is what the left bashes the Fox News over. And they was like, oh, we're objective. We follow real news. This is why when you reference something from Fox News, the comment line will be like, oh, that's not a real journalism thing. That's objective. That's opinion based. They're biased because Fox News is upfront about their biases, while CNN and all these other news corporations, they're not. Now, I think MSNBC are also more upfront about their beliefs, but the left, they don't play, they're not consistent in their logic when they apply it, that they think they're unbiased because, oh no, we follow the facts. Or you right wingers don't follow the facts.
Bruh.
When you can literally make the same argument against them that, hey, you don't follow the facts either. You're getting a left wing biased news outlet. You're referencing a news outlet, but they said no. But the CNN, these other news corporations are reporting the same thing, so it's factual. And I'm like, no, all those three corporations are to the left.
Bruh.
So that's all I'm saying. So that's all I'm trying to say. And I think that's going to be the future. If mainstream media wants to keep its credibility, I think that's the future. That they have to be more upfront about their biases. But I digress.
Okay, but that was the model of objective journalism. All this shatters with the rise of the internet. The rise of internet news truly begins with Matt Drudge. Drudge is the father of internet news making. So I'm lucky enough to have been very close friends with Andrew Breitbart, who worked with Matt Drudge, like right from the inception of the Drudge Report. And Drudge was an old-style muckraker. And he considered himself that. He was a guy who had politics, and also he was interested in getting a story, and he was politically driven, and he was willing to print stuff, and he was willing to go with it. And so he's the first person who scoops the Lewinsky scandal, right? And suddenly the Drudge Report is like the biggest thing.
I think James O'Keefe is going to become the next, what does he say, Andrew Breitbart, whatever that guy was, the guy who just referenced. I think it was Andrew Breitbart. I think James O'Keefe have that same level of potential because this guy reminds me of James O'Keefe. A muckraker that comes in. I think some people do call him the modern muckraker, James O'Keefe. I could be wrong about this, but I just think like hearing about how he's just like, oh, he's just a regular guy. He has fun with it. He's politically driven, whatever. But he's just covering the news. He's just exposing people. He's doing real journalism, right? And I think what James O'Keefe's doing, I can't say enough praises about James O'Keefe. I think if I was thinking about, okay, what's going to be the future of journalism? I think what James O'Keefe is doing, that's going to be the future of journalism. Civilian journalism, grassroots journalism, anybody with a camera, because we got smartphones now. Anybody with a camera could be essentially a journalist. But I digress. I don't know what MSNBC stands for. I'm pretty sure it stands for some long name that I don't care to know. But I digress.
On planet Earth, he ends up being sued by Sidney Blumenthal and the Clinton administration and all of this sort of stuff. But he's completely broken the stranglehold of the mainstream media because what Drudge really did is he showed that there was a tacit bargain between members of the mainstream legacy news and members of the Democratic Party. And Drudge broke it. He said, you guys were willing to bury the story. You've known about this for a long time. You guys were taking your sweet time about printing this. You were going to massage it and play it in a certain way. I'm just going to...
Yep, Sam Harrison with the Biden laptop story. It's funny how history may not repeat itself, but it rhymes. And this is why what this shows me is that in history, we're the same creatures we've always been. Nothing changed about us. Progressives like to put out this narrative that we're better human beings. We're enlightened. We're past those faulty thinkings. No one can think that we're barbarians or whatever. And I'm like, yo, we still like that, bro. Like, the only thing changed is that we have more information.
Bruh.
We still share the same conditions as our ancestors did in the past. And to try to sit here and act like we're some new beings, like we're some transcendent beings, that all of a sudden now biology doesn't matter to 2023 humans, 2023 human beings, that it mattered to 1833 human beings, bruh. It's some foolishness that's going on over here, bro. And it's crazy. We're coming full circle. I'm gonna keep saying that. So I digress.
I'm gonna spill it right out there in the public. The media couldn't deal with it, and they still can't deal with it. Because what this did, by opening up an industry of newsmaking to everyone, is that acts of journalism now went front and center. It used to be being a journalist was the thing you had to be. Drudge went back to acts of journalism make you a journalist. Right? What makes you a journalist, as my friend Andrew Breitbart used to say, is you have a cell phone and you happen to be on scene when anything happens.
Yep.
You are now a journalist. What he meant was acts of journalism can happen anywhere. And you don't have to be an apolitical, objectively trained Columbia School of Journalism fellow in order for you to be a journalist or for.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like credentialism college is now used as some form of gatekeeping to prevent like the common person to come in and make a difference in the country. And this is why I think America kind of got lulled into a false sense of, oh, we can trust the authorities, right? Trust the science, right? The politicized science, right? Trust these people who have a degree, even though they know less about something than you do. But because they have a degree, we're supposed to give them better, like we're supposed to give them some type of level of trust, some level of authority. And this is the game they're playing with these credentials. And this is why I think this is the future, right? You have a phone, you're a journalist, I'm a journalist. We all can report the news, right? Oh, where you got this information from? From this study right here. Like, you don't need a degree to read a study. Like, it's craziness. But they're trying to act like, oh, it's some complicated intellectual thing you wouldn't understand. And this is why appealing to authority is a fallacy. And they're trying to use that fallacy to to get trust from the people. But as you can see, it's failing, because in the day, it don't matter how many degrees you got. It don't matter if you got a doctorate in journalism. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Bruh.
If you say this vaccine doesn't prevents transmission of a virus, and the transmission still happens, you saying this vaccine is supposed to help your immune system so you don't get the virus, but people who got vaccinated and boosted periodically always get sick.
Bruh.
No one can trust you. Objectivity. This is objective reality. Empirical evidence. Show me the result. Don't tell me your narrative. Don't tell me your intentions. Don't tell me what you think. Show me what happens. And this is what journalism has lost. And this is why nowadays journalism is propaganda. I'm just saying, at least mainstream journalists. Because at least what like people like Ben Shapiro, talking heads like me, Vince Dow, we're honest about it. We're more authentic. We're more real. Like, hey, I'm a conservative. This is why. Here's why I believe what I believe. You make a decision, America, what you think about this. What you think about what I said. Right? Gone are the days where a mainstream media is going to tell you the war on Ukraine is good. We should want the war. And people just sit back and be like, yeah, we should want the war. No, we're not programmed. We're not robots. And that's how they want to treat. This is how journalists treat the American consumer. Like we're robots. Issue the people their commands, who they're supposed to believe in. Journalism used to be something where you challenge power. Now it's just you become the mouthpiece of power. That's what journalism has become nowadays. Mainstream journalism anyway. But I digress. Let's get back into the video. We're almost done. 5 more minutes, guys. 5 more minutes.
For you to do acts of journalism. And so Matt Drudge driving enormous amounts of traffic to the internet, and people start getting their news from the internet. The internet is faster than TV. It's more immediate than TV. And you don't have to have it read to you by some talking head like Dan Rather, who ain't that smart anyway. And so all of a sudden, there's just this extraordinary explosion of news sites across the web, right? On the left, on the right, places like Slate and Salon were kind of the first movers in the space on the left, and then you had Drudge Report, and you had Hot Air, you had all of these kind of right-wing sites. There was an explosion of almost old-style American journalism.
Yep.
You're suddenly back in the early 1800s when it was the Democrat versus the Republican. right? When all of the papers had their partisan viewpoints. And you had wandering journalists who were going out and doing acts of wandering journalism. And people like James O'Keefe breaking stories about Acorn that were actually changing the nature of how government was done. So that was, for a while, it was kind of like let 1,000 flowers bloom. And it was kind of great. And then came a point when it seemed like it was going to get even better. Okay, so this is the rise of social media, really around 2006. So for those who remember this, the early internet iteration of news is that you had a list of bookmarks on the side of your computer. And when you opened up your browser, usually Internet Explorer, you would click on all of your bookmarks and it would load these various pages one by one, right? That's what it would do. Social media happens in 2006. Facebook launches to the general public in 2006. Twitter launches to the general public in 2006. And when this happens, it allows people to basically get rid of the bookmarks. You no longer use your bookmarks.
Yep. Information has never been easier to get in 2023. And this is why I think it's no excuse for America to be, how you say, ignorant of their political system. If you don't know something about your political system, research it. People will go on to you and say, I don't understand why we have an electoral college. Why we don't just elect someone based on popular vote?
Bruh.
Research that. Look at the electoral college. Recognize the electoral college was meant so that all states had their say. Because if you went by just majority rules, politicians will not go to your small state in Vermont. They'll just focus on the 4 biggest states in the union: Texas, Florida, California, and New York, and then that's it. They wouldn't go anywhere else because that's where most of the population is. With the electoral college, it forces the politician to at least cater to more wide breadth or more general amount of states, regardless of their population, because their vote is needed to win the electoral college.
Bruh.
But they won't even do that basic level research on why the electoral college is the way it is. We have all this information in the palm of our hand, and what we do with it, what we use it for, to mindlessly entertain ourselves on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, distract ourselves. Like, that's what a lot of Americans are doing. They're just consuming mindless entertainment. They're not really learning anything. And this is why the IQ, this is why Americans are getting dumber, because we're relying a lot on this. A lot of Americans who used to be able to do math off the top of their head. 7 plus 7, 14. Now they go 7 plus 7. Let me use the calculator, because we became reliant on the technology to do the work for us. But hey, man, I digress, man. I'm struggling. I'm struggling not to be addicted to YouTube. It's not about being addicted to YouTube. It's what you use it for, right? It doesn't matter. It's like the thing itself is not necessarily bad. It's how you use it. I'm not saying you can't you can find entertainment. Like, I find entertainment on YouTube. I watch YouTube for entertainment, for my news, for my information, sourcing my videos for what I'm gonna react for the week. That's important. It's how you utilize it that makes it good or bad. Because what's the purpose? What is the purpose of you going on this website for? Are you there to learn, or are you there to get entertained? I'm there to get entertained. Okay, continue. Right? But there's moderation in all things. That's all. That's it. Right? Me, I take a social media break because ever since I started doing the YouTube internet thing, I find that I tend to stay, or during the weekends, I send the cold turkey. I never go on. I do still go on YouTube, but I consume it, just consume YouTube, because right now I'm a producer. I'm producing content. On weekends, I don't feel like producing any content. I just feel like relaxing, watching videos, just relax, like reading books. That's how I take time for myself, right? And I that's why I say I encourage people to find a day, make it one day, and be like, I'm staying away from social media. And this is what I think this is what drives a lot of negative emotion, especially for women. You guys get hit hard with social media, right? Y'all clock more hours on social media, and you get more negative feedback from social media because you end up doing this comparison thing. Like, you see a woman, she's showing her butt online and she's getting 1,000 likes. And you see a woman that's in a sundress and she gets like 10 likes, right? And you see that, damn, like, people care about me for this instead of this. And you start chasing that validation. And that's what's causing a lot of women to have these depressive. This is what cause a lot of young girls to be depressed. The higher rates of depression, feeling unsatisfied, or not unsatisfied, I forgot how you say it. Happiness, impacting their happiness and self-worth and self-esteem is because of social media, right? And this is why I'm a big component of not letting my kid have social media.
Bruh.
I'm just saying. Let's wrap up this video. We got 3 minutes left. Let's see if I can get 1 minute and 50 without getting copyrighted.
Why? Well, you just go to Facebook, and Facebook will algorithmically show you all the things that you want to see, all the various sites, headline by headline. Twitter will do the same thing. You can follow the people that you like. And suddenly, the availability of internet news is astonishing, right? Sites like the Daily Wire, we can start up, and we can be enormous inside of a year, 2 years, because suddenly people can see us, right? Whereas before, even with the rise of Drudge, you had to specifically seek out Matt Drudge. You had to know the name of the site, or you had to specifically seek out the Daily Wire. No longer. Now you go to Facebook, and Facebook feeds you our site, and if you keep clicking on our site, Facebook keeps feeding you our site. And so you can have sites that start up and become immediate successes. And not only that, the number of eyeballs that are on Facebook or on Twitter are so much greater than the number of eyeballs that you would get just by typing in Drudge Report, or the number of people who even know the name of my publication, right? That suddenly you can have hundreds of millions of people visiting sites that did not exist 2 years ago.
And this is an opportunity I think a lot of people have. The barriers of entry has lowered that people can have more influence in our culture. And that can necessarily be a good thing, but it also can necessarily be a bad thing. And that's what I'm saying. Objectively, I want that opportunity, because just as we all know, there's a lot of dumb people out there and they're giving out dumb opinions. There's also a lot of smart people, and that's also give them a platform. And we're participating in it now. And this is why I say this is the future, right? Essentially, the internet democratized a lot of things. It circumvented the old guard. Before, it used to have to be like, oh, what are your credentials? Why should American people listen to you? Like, bruh. Nowadays, people is like, yo, this guy makes good points. I'm going to subscribe to him. I'm going to follow him, and I'm going to continue. So, end of the day, now the opportunity is there that to change minds, to affect the culture. Like, effectively, every American in the world that has access to social media essentially has a voice. No matter how big, no matter how small, you could participate in a movement. You can participate in change. And I think this is I don't know. I heard this from Michael Malice, like the white pill. This is the white pill, right? And this is why tech companies and the liberals or the authoritarian leftists, they go out of their way to try to censor and ban people, because they realize that they can't compete on an equal playing field with people, because they rely so much on having credentials behind them, having the authorities behind them, having the power behind their worldview and their narrative, that they never felt the need to defend their beliefs before, until social media came in. Bruh. So, hey, competition is only going to make everyone better, right? Rumble's coming out here trying to be an alternative, and this is a long-term play. It may not be something immediate now, but if conservatives keep supporting, right, the quiet, I forgot how you got it, the silent protesting, right? We walk away from putting our kids in public schools. We shift our spending to companies that actually like us. They don't hate us because we're conservative, right? As we do that over time, because we have to play the long game, just like the left played the long game to take over Hollywood and news media and colleges, we have to play the long game to recapture all that back, or at least even it out, level the playing field, right? And this is why I support Daily Wire. I'm a Daily Wire subscriber. This is why I hope they hurry up and make their kids content so I can put my son in front of that, right? They're trying to meet a market that's there, that's being underserved by the current establishment. And this is how you get upstarts, right? So I digress, but let's get back into the video. Yeah, Rumble is kind of hard. Like it's hard to get discovered on Rumble, and their interface is buggy still, right? It's hard to interact with the app. So I can understand, Tech Boy, why you don't like Rumble. I only use Rumble. Like I try to use the web app, and it's been like pulling teeth, and their dev team really needs to work on that. So I tend to use Rumble on the website more than I do on the app, but I digress.
And this is all considered, kind of a good thing, right? I mean, if you listen to Mark Zuckerberg in the early days of Facebook, he said, this is great, let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? We want more free speech, not less free speech. We want to make sure that everybody's opinion is heard. More news is good. Then came 2016. And when Donald Trump won in 2016, it broke everything. And the reason it broke everything is because suddenly the legacy media, having realized over the course of the past several years they were losing money, that they had a serious problem because they were losing money, right? All the objective journalismers who were not really objective were getting outpaced by the Matt Drudges of the world, or by the Breitbarts of the world, or by the Daily Wires of the world. When they realized that, they realized they had a golden opportunity. 2016, when Trump wins, the entire journalistic establishment sides with the Democrats, and they start pressuring social media. And they say, there's no way Donald Trump is a fascist, he's Hitlerian, there's no way he can have won. There's no way he can have won. The only way he could have won is if Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media sites somehow rigged the game. It's because they rigged the game. That's how Donald Trump won.
So, and that's the popular narrative that the left like to believe, is that they saw that, damn, if we let people come up to their own devices, it can create an outcome can happen that we didn't want to happen. So this is why they pressure trying to control the playing field. This is why they try to stack the odds in their favor, right? And it's a game of war at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, the left, they have this belief that the ends justify the means. And as long as the means, we believe the means is good, getting that ends, even if it means to lie, cheat, and steal, is worth it. And this is the mindset of the authoritarian leftists, the progressives today.
Bruh.
I'm just being honest. This is what they actually believe. But I digress.
So what we need them to do is we need them to crack down on all of our competitors. All of our competitors must be silenced. We need to make sure that we change the algorithms. We can't let misinformation and disinformation be the modes of information that people get. We can't let people see the Daily Wire or Breitbart or Daily Caller alongside the New York Times. The New York Times is trustworthy. We're objective journalismers. We went to Columbia Journalism School, even though we promote Nicole Hannah-Jones. Right? That's what we are. And these people, they
you saw in the Larry Elder video, I referenced her and saying how she's not a real journalist, but we're more credible. But you having someone that's not really an historian, but you allow her to push her revisionist history, right? But if someone on Fox News did that, and we put Larry Elder, who made the documentary Uncle Tom 2, you're gonna say, oh look, they're teaching right-wing revisionist history.
Bruh.
But if I'm being objective and I'm trying to call it down the middle, I'm saying, hey, this news show is purporting some left-wing revisionist history, because this person is not a real historian. She's giving inaccurate accounts of 1619, but we're supposed to believe she's more credible than Larry Elder, who made Uncle Tom 2. Like,
Bruh.
hypocrisy thy name. But they don't care. As long as the ends is, we want you to believe this narrative more than to believe the other narrative. So we're going to try to position ourselves as more trustworthy, like censor untrustworthy news sites, because we're trying to protect you from learning an inconvenient truth that the other side has, valid points that the other side have. This is why when I did my Uncle Tom review of the Uncle Tom 2 trailer, I was getting a lot of comments saying this is revisionist history. And I commented back fast as hell. I said, "Oh, it's revisionist history because it doesn't validate a conclusion that you have about the history. That's why it's revisionist history.
Bruh.
It doesn't meet it isn't purport the same worldview as you. That's what you call it, revisionist history. Instead of looking at the arguments and saying, okay, does it challenge what I know or not? And if it does, is it valid or not? Does it make sense or not?" And this is why the left can't have debate. This is why the left is so scared to compete on an even playing field, because they want a certain outcome. They don't care about processes. Conservatives care about process. Hey, are we playing by the same rules? Yes. Okay. The results on me. But the left care about an outcome. We want a certain outcome. We want Trump in jail. It doesn't matter if he's innocent. It doesn't matter if he's innocent. He should go to jail because I want him in jail. They want the conclusion, but without the evidence. They want a conclusion and they work backwards to find the evidence to justify the conclusion, instead of letting the evidence lead you to a conclusion. And this is the reverse thinking that's going on right now in mainstream media. But I digress.
They can't be allowed to flourish. If they're allowed to flourish, people like Donald Trump are going to win. And Facebook and Twitter, under threat of legislation from Democrats in the Senate, they decided, okay, I guess so. And so they started to shut down the practice of journalism that was not from the approved media sources, from the fake, objective, legacy media sources. And that's sort of where we are today. The only thing I would add here is that Elon Musk has broken that open in Twitter.
Yeah, so this was an old video. I think I'm done. Whoo, finally. Whoo, we're done. Oh, my God. Oh, my back hurts. Well, I've been sitting on this chair for too long. So, you see the game of credentialism, right? And this is what I'm saying. Journalism is supposed to be something you do, not something you have to get permission by those in authority, because those in authority will only nominate people that agree with their worldview. So I'm like,
Bruh.
So that doesn't make you more trusted just because the powers that be appoint you to be, you're responsible for teaching, showing the people news that we want you to purport. And I think this is why like grassroots movements are growing. This is why a lot of people don't trust the mainstream media, because we all know they're trying to purport a certain narrative. But yeah, that's the end of the video for me, guys. What do you guys think? Congratulations. I finished under 3 hours. I did it. I'm probably going to do the timestamps tomorrow because I'm pretty tired. But my final thoughts is that Ben Shapiro does a great job. The Rise and Fall of America News Media. If you guys want to check out that video yourself and kind of walk through it yourself to redo everything. But it was a great video. Like, I think Ben made a lot of good points. A lot of history that we don't get taught in public school, right? And 70% of kids are taught in public school, and it's funny that you start seeing the lack of knowledge that we have, and we're like, damn, like maybe we should. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what's going on, and this is why I'm really a proponent of school choice, because I believe education is the biggest battle that conservatives can have, especially that we're statistically having more kids than liberals. Yo, they're trying to teach our kids this stuff, and we're the majority parental wise, right? Because for every one kid that a liberal has, conservatives have 2. And this is why they project, oh, Gen Alpha is going to be more conservative because conservatives are just having more kids. So I think, like Hitler says, your children are your future. And he who teaches the children has control over the future. And that's what the left is trying to do with pushing transgenderism on our kids, teaching them this woke narrative stuff. This is why they focus so much on the kids, because they realize, yo, if we can get them, we can install our utopia. We can make these people more susceptible to our ideas. And I think that's the conclusion that the left is trying to get to. Let me look at the chats before I get off. Could you explain what does the Bible say about separate accounts when you get married to do your main account? So I think the Bible says that you become one flesh. So technically, you're supposed to have a combined account. That's just my understanding. I don't know how it applies to current times. I think a lot of that was interesting. We'll have to rewatch it. We should be more informed. So much drama gets treated as journalism and news, while actual journalism news is pushed off. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree with Koyi. I really do agree with that sentiment. Well, guys, if you have nothing else, I really do, guys, appreciate you guys for watching me for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I do appreciate you guys. I hope you guys find it insightful. If you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment what you thought about the live stream. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, guys. And I really will see you guys on the next video. Peace. Have a good night. Happy weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.